The deeper archaeologists explore humanity's earliest past, the more the historical record reveals enduring puzzles that remain resistant to definitive explanation. Colossal monuments weather the passage of millennia. Undeciphered inscriptions preserve voices no one can yet interpret, and carefully arranged burial sites continue to challenge established understanding of early societies. Each discovery broadens the story of our origins while exposing new layers of uncertainty. Settle in as we uncover the evidence, the unanswered clues, and the events that continue to challenge historians today. At the edge of the modern city of Mersin, on the southern coast of Turkey, a broad, earthen mound rises quietly above the surrounding landscape. At first glance, it appears almost ordinary, a gentle hill shaped by time rather than nature. Yet every layer beneath its surface represents generations of human lives, carefully stacked over thousands of years. Stone foundations, traces of ancient fires, fragments of pottery, and the remains of long-abandoned homes form a continuous record of settlement that reaches back to around 7000 BC. Few places preserve such a deep timeline of human occupation, and fewer still continue to raise as many thoughtful questions as Yumuktepe. Archaeologists have spent decades uncovering its many layers, revealing a settlement that changed repeatedly as societies evolved. Early farming communities established themselves here, cultivating crops and raising animals while gradually developing more complex forms of social organization. Over centuries, new buildings replaced older ones, technologies improved, and trade networks expanded. The mound itself grew taller not because people intended to build a hill, but because each generation constructed its future directly upon the remains of the past. One of the site's most remarkable discoveries is a series of defensive walls dating to roughly 4500 BC. These stone fortifications are among the earliest known examples of organized defensive architecture in the region. Their presence immediately raises important questions. Why would a farming community invest enormous effort into constructing such substantial barriers? Were they responding to growing competition over fertile land? Were neighboring settlements becoming increasingly hostile? Or did these walls serve purposes beyond defense, marking social status or controlling movement into the settlement? The evidence offers possibilities but few definitive answers. Archaeological remains reveal moments of prosperity followed by periods of rebuilding, suggesting that life at Yumuktepe was rarely static. Environmental changes, shifting trade routes, and population growth may all have shaped its development. Yet, many details remain frustratingly incomplete. Excavated structures provide only fragments of larger stories, leaving researchers to reconstruct entire lifetimes from scattered objects preserved beneath layers of soil. Artifacts recovered from the site reveal connections extending far beyond the immediate region. Obsidian from distant volcanic sources, finely crafted tools, decorative objects, and imported materials indicate that Yumuktepe participated in exchange networks spanning considerable distances. Such discoveries challenge older assumptions that early farming communities lived in relative isolation. Instead, they suggest a world where ideas, materials, and perhaps beliefs traveled between settlements over hundreds of kilometers. But how extensive were these contacts? Did traders carry only goods, or were they also exchanging knowledge about agriculture, architecture, and ritual practices? Could innovations have spread through gradual cultural contact rather than independent invention? Archaeology continues to investigate these possibilities, yet the surviving evidence cannot fully reveal the conversations, alliances, or rivalries that may have shaped daily life thousands of years ago. Some researchers focus on practical explanations for the settlement's remarkable longevity. Yumuktepe occupied a favorable location near fertile plains and routes connecting inland Anatolia with the Mediterranean coast. Access to fresh water, productive farmland, and regional trade likely contributed to its endurance through changing historical periods. Others have looked beyond economics alone. A few fringe interpretations suggest that the site's repeated rebuilding reflects cultural traditions carrying symbolic meaning, with each generation deliberately preserving continuity by constructing directly over earlier homes. Some have even proposed that its enduring occupation points to an exceptional role within wider regional networks of influence. These ideas remain speculative, supported more by patterns of interpretation than by conclusive evidence, yet they continue to appear in discussions surrounding the site because the archaeological record leaves room for multiple readings. Excavation itself adds another layer of uncertainty. Only portions of the mound have been explored, while much of Yumuktepe remains untouched beneath later deposits. Every excavation answers certain questions while creating new ones, revealing details that reshape previous interpretations. Objects once thought ordinary sometimes acquire greater significance as additional discoveries emerge nearby, reminding historians that understanding the past is an evolving process rather than a finished narrative. Standing before the mound today, it is easy to see centuries compressed into a single landscape. Beneath each exposed wall lies another settlement, another generation, another chapter still waiting to be interpreted. How many stories remain sealed within the unexcavated layers, and what future discoveries might transform our understanding of one of humanity's oldest continuously inhabited places? From the layered settlements of Anatolia, where generations quietly built upon the lives of those who came before them, our journey now crosses continents to the towering Andes of northern Peru. Here, another ancient site invites careful examination, not because it offers easy answers, but because its stones preserve a different kind of silence, one shaped by ritual, belief, and the passage of millennia. High in the Cajamarca region, surrounded by rugged mountains and shifting clouds, Kuntur Wasi stands on a broad hill overlooking fertile valleys below. The landscape feels commanding without appearing inaccessible. Even today, the location offers sweeping views in every direction, allowing anyone standing on its ceremonial terraces to appreciate why this place may have held special significance. The name, often translated from the Quechua language as House of the Condor, evokes one of the Andes' most enduring symbols, a bird long associated with the sky, power, and spiritual connection. Long before the rise of the Inca Empire, Kuntur Wasi flourished as an important ceremonial center. Archaeological evidence suggests that construction began around 1200 BC, during a period when societies throughout the central Andes were becoming increasingly organized and socially complex. Massive stone platforms, carefully designed plazas, and monumental stairways reveal a community capable of planning large-scale architectural projects requiring both coordination and skilled labor. Unlike settlements built primarily for everyday life, Kuntur Wasi appears to have been shaped with ceremony in mind. Its layout directs movement through elevated spaces, enclosed courtyards, and carefully constructed passages. Visitors approaching the central structures would have experienced a deliberate sequence of ascent and enclosure. Was this purely practical architecture, or was every step intended to reinforce shared beliefs and social order? Excavations have uncovered remarkable artifacts that hint at the site's importance. Among the most celebrated discoveries are finely crafted gold ornaments dating to nearly 3,000 years ago, making them some of the earliest known examples of sophisticated goldworking in the Americas. Delicate necklaces, hammered crowns, and ceremonial objects demonstrate technical abilities that continue to impress archaeologists today. The presence of such valuable objects raises important questions. Gold possesses little practical value for survival, yet enormous effort was invested in obtaining, shaping, and preserving it. Why? Was it simply a symbol of political authority, Or did it represent something deeper within the spiritual traditions of the people who gathered here? Stone sculptures add another layer of intrigue. Several depict human figures combined with the features of powerful animals, including jaguars, birds, and serpents. Such imagery appears throughout ancient Andean cultures, often interpreted as expressions of transformation, spiritual authority, or connections between the natural and supernatural worlds. Mainstream archaeology generally views these figures as symbolic representations connected to ritual belief systems rather than literal beings. Even so, their precise meanings remain uncertain. Without written records explaining their purpose, every interpretation depends upon careful comparison with later traditions and surviving material evidence. Were these figures intended to represent respected religious leaders wearing ceremonial attire? Did they illustrate myths passed from one generation to the next? Or were they visual expressions of ideas that modern researchers can only partially reconstruct? Some scholars emphasize Kuntur Wasi's role within a broader network of ceremonial centers that emerged throughout the Andes during this period. Shared artistic styles, architectural similarities, and traded materials suggest regular contact between distant communities. Religious traditions may have spread alongside commerce, creating cultural connections across challenging mountain landscapes. Other, more speculative perspectives have proposed that the remarkable alignment of certain architectural features reflects sophisticated astronomical knowledge or encoded ceremonial calendars. Researchers have indeed documented that many ancient societies carefully observed celestial cycles for agricultural and ritual purposes. However, whether every alignment at Kuntur Wasi was intentional or simply a consequence of practical construction remains an open subject of debate. The available evidence allows for multiple interpretations, but none has achieved universal acceptance. As excavation continues, new discoveries occasionally reshape earlier assumptions. Beneath later construction phases lie older buildings, preserving traces of ceremonies performed centuries before the site's final form emerged. Each layer reveals continuity as well as change, suggesting that beliefs evolved while certain traditions endured. Standing among the weathered stone terraces today, surrounded by mountain winds and distant peaks, it becomes clear that Kuntur Wasi was far more than an isolated collection of buildings. It was a place where architecture, landscape, craftsmanship, and belief came together with remarkable intention. Yet, despite decades of careful research, the voices of those who gathered here remain beyond our reach. How much of their world has already been uncovered, and how much still waits beneath the earth, preserved in silence until the next discovery begins to speak? From the ceremonial heights of Kuntur Wasi, where stone monuments still overlook the Andean valleys, our journey shifts once again, this time to the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where entire kingdoms once rose, flourished, and disappeared beneath layers of earth. Here, one remarkable discovery reminds us that some chapters of history are not found through deliberate excavation alone, but emerge unexpectedly when nature briefly reveals what it had concealed for generations. Along the eastern bank of the Tigris River, in what is now the Kurdistan region of Iraq, the outlines of an ancient city appeared under extraordinary circumstances. As water levels in the Mosul Dam Reservoir dropped during a severe drought in 2022, stone walls, buildings, and streets slowly emerged from beneath the receding shoreline. For archaeologists, the scene was both rare and urgent. The city had spent decades submerged, protected by water, yet inaccessible to careful study. Time was suddenly limited, and every day became an opportunity to recover knowledge before the reservoir filled once again. The site is widely identified as Zakhiku, an important urban center associated with the Mitanni Empire, a powerful kingdom that dominated parts of northern Mesopotamia during the second millennium BC. Although the city's existence had been proposed for many years, Its dramatic reappearance transformed historical possibility into tangible reality. Massive defensive walls, carefully planned buildings, storage facilities, and administrative structures began to emerge with remarkable clarity, despite centuries of burial and decades beneath the reservoir. One of the most striking discoveries was the exceptional state of preservation. Mud brick architecture rarely survives for thousands of years, especially after prolonged exposure to water. Yet many walls remain standing several meters high, their outlines still defining rooms and passageways built more than 3,000 years ago. Archaeologists believe that a destructive earthquake may have caused sections of the city to collapse rapidly, burying lower structures beneath protective debris before erosion could erase them entirely. The preservation naturally raises intriguing questions. Was the earthquake solely responsible for safeguarding so much of the settlement? Or did later deposits of sediment and the reservoir itself unintentionally create conditions that shielded these fragile remains from further decay? The scientific explanations are plausible, yet the degree of survival continues to surprise specialists familiar with mud brick construction. Among the discoveries, a collection of clay tablets has attracted particular attention. Carefully stored inside ceramic vessels, these cuneiform texts survived despite centuries underground and years beneath the reservoir. Written during a period of political transition following the decline of Mitanni influence, the tablets promise valuable insight into local administration, trade, and regional governance. Their contents, however, remain only partially understood. Deciphering ancient cuneiform requires painstaking analysis, and each newly translated line has the potential to reshape existing interpretations. Do these records describe ordinary economic transactions, or might they preserve details about political events that have remained absent from other historical sources? Could they reveal names of officials, diplomatic relationships, or responses to crises that unfolded during the city's final years? Most historians approach these discoveries cautiously, viewing Zakhiku as an important addition to an already complex picture of Bronze Age Mesopotamia. Every new structure, inscription, and artifact contributes another piece to a historical landscape shaped by powerful kingdoms, shifting alliances, and expanding trade networks. At the same time, more speculative interpretations occasionally emerge. Some have suggested that cities like Zakhiku demonstrate how many significant urban centers may still remain undiscovered beneath reservoirs, river sediments, or modern settlements throughout Mesopotamia. Others wonder whether the rapid disappearance of entire communities following natural disasters has caused historians to underestimate the true scale and complexity of regional civilization during this period. These ideas remain hypotheses rather than established conclusions, but discoveries such as Zakhiku encourage researchers to keep an open mind as new evidence continues to surface. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Zakhiku is the way it entered modern awareness. Unlike many archaeological sites uncovered through decades of systematic excavation, this city briefly returned because environmental conditions changed for only a short time. As water levels rose once more, many of the exposed remains disappeared beneath the reservoir again, protected for the present but once again beyond easy reach. It is an unusual reminder that history does not always reveal itself according to human schedules. Sometimes the landscape decides when a forgotten city may be seen, and for how long. Beneath the quiet waters of the Tigris, how many streets, archives, and unanswered stories still wait for another rare moment when the past briefly rises back into the light. From the submerged remains of Zakhiku, where a lost chapter of Mesopotamian history briefly emerged from beneath the waters of the Tigris, our exploration continues deeper into the landscapes where empires once competed for influence and control. Not far away, among the rugged mountains of Iraqi Kurdistan, Another ancient settlement offers a glimpse into a world shaped by conquest, trade, and the ambitions of powerful rulers. High above the Diyala River Valley, surrounded by steep hills and dramatic terrain, lies the archaeological site of Qalatga Darband. Its name reflects the region's mountainous character, often associated with a fortified place overlooking a narrow passage. For centuries, the landscape concealed traces of a settlement whose significance was only gradually recognized. Today, the remains offer a rare opportunity to examine a frontier city positioned between different cultures and political powers. The site gained renewed attention in the 21st century when satellite imagery revealed unusual patterns in the landscape, suggesting the presence of buried structures. Archaeologists later investigated the area, uncovering evidence of ancient walls, architectural foundations, and artifacts indicating a settlement that flourished during the Hellenistic period, following the conquests of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC. Early interpretations suggested that Qalatga Darband may have been founded or expanded during the era when Greek and local traditions began merging throughout the Near East. The city appears to have occupied a strategically important location, positioned along routes connecting Mesopotamia with the Iranian plateau. Such locations were rarely chosen by accident. Control of mountain passes meant control over movement, trade, and military access. Yet, the exact identity and purpose of the settlement remain subjects of investigation. Was Qalatga Darband primarily a commercial center, where merchants exchanged goods between distant regions? Was it a military outpost designed to secure a vulnerable border zone? Or did it serve a broader administrative role within the changing political landscape after Alexander's campaigns? Archaeological evidence provides fragments of the answer. Excavations have revealed structures built with careful planning, including residential areas and possible public buildings. Artifacts suggest connections with the wider Hellenistic world, while local architectural elements demonstrate that the population was not simply adopting foreign traditions, but creating a unique cultural blend. This mixture raises deeper questions about identity in the ancient world. When different civilizations met, did communities see themselves as divided between separate cultures, or did they develop new identities that combined multiple influences? Could a place like Qalatga Darband represent not a boundary between worlds, but a meeting point where ideas, languages, and customs continuously transformed? Some more speculative interpretations have suggested that the site may have been connected to larger historical events involving Alexander's successors or regional conflicts that shaped the centuries after his death. Because written references to the settlement are limited, researchers must rely heavily on archaeology to reconstruct its role. The absence of detailed records has created space for competing theories, though many remain uncertain and require further evidence. Another layer of intrigue comes from the possibility that much of Qalatga Darband has yet to be uncovered. The surrounding landscape contains numerous unexplored areas, and ancient settlements often extend beyond the limits visible at the surface. Future excavations may reveal additional structures, inscriptions, or objects capable of changing current interpretations. The story of Qalatga Darband reflects a recurring challenge in archaeology. The remains of a city can survive for thousands of years, yet the voices of the people who built it are often far harder to recover. Stones can reveal where people lived and how they constructed their world, but understanding their ambitions, fears, and beliefs requires careful interpretation. Among the mountains of Kurdistan, this ancient settlement continues to stand as a reminder of how much remains uncertain about the crossroads of early civilizations. What other connections, forgotten journeys, and untold histories might still be waiting within the layers of Qalatga Darband? From the mountain corridors of Qalatga Darband, where cultures met along ancient routes of exchange and conflict, our journey now moves toward the vast plains of the northwestern Indian subcontinent. Here, Beside the long-vanished course of the Ghaggar-Hakra river system lies a settlement that offers one of the clearest glimpses into the organized world of the Indus Valley civilization. Yet, beneath its carefully planned streets and ancient foundations, Kalibangan continues to raise questions about a society whose achievements are well documented, but whose final chapters remain uncertain. On the dry landscape of Rajasthan, India, the remains of Kalibangan rise quietly from the desert terrain. At first sight, the site appears as a collection of weathered earth and exposed brick fragments. But beneath the surface lies evidence of a settlement that existed more than 4,000 years ago, during one of the earliest urban civilizations known to humanity. Established around 3,500 BC, and later becoming an important center of the mature Indus Valley civilization around 2,600 BC, Kalibangan reveals a world of carefully planned streets, fortified areas, and sophisticated systems of daily life. Archaeological excavations beginning in the 1960s uncovered a settlement divided into organized sections, reflecting the structured planning seen at other Indus sites. Houses were built along streets arranged in a grid pattern, with wells, drainage systems, and standardized brick construction suggesting a high level of civic organization. Such details challenge older assumptions about early urban societies, showing that complex planning existed long before many later historical kingdoms emerged. One of Kalibangan's most remarkable discoveries was not found within its walls, but in the fields surrounding the settlement. Archaeologists uncovered what is considered one of the earliest known plowed agricultural fields in the world. The furrows preserved in the soil reveal a deliberate farming technique, with intersecting patterns that may have allowed different crops to be cultivated together. This discovery provides a rare connection between ancient technology and the everyday lives of farmers who supported the city. Yet, even with these discoveries, many questions remain. Why did the people of Kalibangan choose this particular location? Was the settlement's success primarily due to fertile land, access to river networks, or its position within wider trade routes? And how did a civilization capable of such precise planning eventually experience decline across the region? One of the enduring debates surrounding Kalibangan concerns the environmental changes that affected the Indus Valley civilization. Some researchers suggest that shifting river patterns, reduced rainfall, or ecological pressures may have contributed to the transformation of settlements throughout the region. Others emphasize economic changes and the gradual movement of populations toward more favorable areas. The evidence suggests a complex process rather than a single dramatic event. The site also contains traces of ritual activity, including unusual fire-related structures that some archaeologists interpret as ceremonial installations. These discoveries have led to discussions about religious practices among Indus communities, whose written symbols remain undeciphered. Without the ability to read their inscriptions, researchers must reconstruct beliefs through architecture, artifacts, and comparisons with later traditions. Some more speculative interpretations propose that certain features of Kalibangan may reveal lost aspects of Indus knowledge, including advanced environmental understanding or symbolic systems that modern researchers have only partially recognized. These ideas remain debated, as the available evidence does not provide clear conclusions. Still, the uncertainty surrounding the civilization's language and beliefs continues to make every discovery significant. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Kalibangan is not what was built there, but what cannot yet be fully recovered. The people who walked its streets, cultivated its fields, and shaped its city left behind remarkable evidence of their existence, yet their own voices remain silent. As the desert winds move across the remains of Kalibangan, the settlement stands as a reminder of both human achievement and historical uncertainty. How many stories of this ancient community remain buried beneath the soil, waiting for future discoveries to reveal what life was truly like at the edge of one of the world's earliest urban civilizations. From the carefully planned streets of Kalibangan, where early urban communities shaped their world through agriculture and architecture, our journey now moves westward toward the rugged landscapes of the southern Levant. Here, between barren mountains and desert valleys, lies a place where human history reaches deep into the earliest chapters of metal production, settlement, and technological transformation. In the quiet wilderness of Wadi Faynan, the traces of ancient industry reveal a world where humanity began reshaping the natural environment on an unprecedented scale. Located in southern Jordan, within a dramatic landscape of sandstone cliffs, dry riverbeds, and mineral-rich hills, Wadi Faynan appears at first to be a remote and unforgiving region. Yet, beneath its harsh surface lies evidence of thousands of years of human activity. The valley became one of the most important centers of copper production in the ancient Near East, with mining and metalworking beginning as early as the Neolithic period and expanding significantly during the Bronze Age. The importance of Wadi Faynan came from a resource hidden within its landscape: copper ore. For ancient communities, copper represented more than a valuable material. It marked a technological turning point, allowing people to create stronger tools, weapons, and objects that reflected increasing social complexity. Archaeological remains show that inhabitants extracted ore from the surrounding mountains, processed it in large-scale furnaces, and transformed raw minerals into usable metal. The scale of this activity is one of the most remarkable aspects of the site. Excavations have uncovered ancient mines, smelting installations, stone tools, charcoal deposits, and layers of industrial waste known as slag. These remains reveal an organized production system requiring knowledge of geology, fire control, labor coordination, and long-distance exchange. But the evidence also raises difficult questions. How did early communities develop such advanced metallurgical techniques? Was copper production gradually refined through generations of experimentation, or did certain breakthroughs appear more suddenly than expected? And what social structures were necessary to organize such demanding work in a landscape where survival itself required adaptation? Researchers generally view Wadi Faynan as an example of gradual technological development. Human communities living in the region likely discovered copper minerals naturally exposed on the surface, experimented with heating and processing them, and slowly improved their methods over centuries. This interpretation fits with archaeological evidence from other early metalworking regions. However, the site has also attracted more speculative discussions. Some have suggested that the complexity of early copper production reflects a level of organization that challenges traditional views of prehistoric societies. Others have wondered whether Wadi Faynan represents a forgotten center of innovation, whose influence extended farther than current evidence can prove. These ideas remain debated, as archaeology continues to distinguish between what the material record demonstrates and what remains possible but unconfirmed. Beyond technology, Wadi Faynan offers insight into humanity's changing relationship with nature. Thousands of years of mining and smelting left visible marks on the landscape, transforming hillsides and altering local environments. The remains provide one of the earliest examples of large-scale human impact on a natural setting, showing that environmental change caused by human activity is not only a modern phenomenon. The valley also contains evidence of changing ways of life. Some periods show permanent settlement, while others reveal shifts toward different patterns of movement and resource use. These changes reflect a broader story of adaptation, as communities responded to climate, population growth, and evolving economic systems. Standing among the abandoned mines and ancient furnaces of Wadi Faynan, it is difficult not to consider the ambition behind these early industries. Long before modern technology, People were already transforming landscapes, developing specialized knowledge, and creating networks that connected distant communities. Yet many details remain uncertain. The voices of the miners and craftsmen who worked these valleys have disappeared, leaving only fragments behind. What drove them to pursue copper on such a remarkable scale, and how much of their knowledge and innovation still remains buried within the silent remains of Wadi Faynan. From the copper furnaces of Wadi Faynan, where early communities transformed stone and mineral into the foundations of new technologies, our journey now moves toward a monument created by one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world. In the mountains of southern Iran, above a vast plain once crossed by kings, merchants, and foreign envoys, stands a place designed not only to display wealth and authority, but also to express an empire's vision of order. At the foot of Kuhe Rahmat, the Mountain of Mercy, the remains of Persepolis rise from the landscape like a frozen moment from more than 2,000 years ago. Massive stone staircases, towering columns, and carved reliefs still preserve the image of a royal center, unlike any other in the ancient Near East. Known today as the Persepolis Terrace, this enormous platform was created during the Achaemenid Persian Empire, beginning under King Darius I around 518 BC and expanded by his successors, including Xerxes I and Artaxerxes I. Unlike a typical city built for everyday life, Persepolis appears to have been designed as a ceremonial stage. The immense terrace, covering approximately 125,000 square meters, supported palaces, audience halls, treasuries, and administrative buildings. Visitors approaching the complex would have climbed grand stairways decorated with carefully carved scenes of tribute bearers arriving from different regions of the empire. Each figure was shown with distinctive clothing and gifts, presenting an image of unity among diverse peoples under Persian rule. Yet, behind this carefully controlled image lies a deeper question. Was Persepolis simply a monument celebrating imperial power, or did its architecture carry symbolic meanings connected to Persian beliefs about kingship, cosmic order, and the relationship between rulers and the world around them? The most famous structure on the terrace, the Apadana Palace, offers part of the answer. Its enormous audience hall could accommodate thousands of visitors and likely served as the setting for important ceremonies, including gatherings connected to the Persian New Year festival of Nowruz. The reliefs suggest a carefully organized universe in which nations, officials, and the king all occupied their proper place. But the precision of Persepolis also creates unanswered questions. How were such massive stones transported and positioned with such accuracy? How did workers coordinate the construction of a complex requiring thousands of craftsmen, engineers, and laborers from across the empire? Historical records provide some insight, including administrative tablets discovered at the site, but many details of daily construction remain beyond our complete understanding. Some more speculative interpretations have focused on the astronomical and symbolic aspects of Persepolis. Researchers have examined the orientation of buildings, the movement of sunlight through architectural spaces, and possible connections between design and ancient Persian religious concepts. While certain alignments may reflect intentional planning, the extent of their symbolic meaning remains debated among scholars. The history of Persepolis also contains a dramatic moment of destruction. In 330 BC, Alexander of Macedon captured the city during his campaign against the Persian Empire. Ancient sources describe the burning of Persepolis, though the reasons behind the destruction remain debated. Was it an act of revenge for earlier Persian attacks on Greece? Was it a deliberate political statement? Or did the event unfold through a more complex series of decisions and circumstances? What remains today is not simply a ruin, but a record of ambition, artistry, and cultural exchange. The carvings show an empire that stretched across vast territories, while the architecture reveals extraordinary organizational ability. Yet the voices of the people who designed, built, and experienced Persepolis remain distant. Standing among the silent columns of the terrace, one question continues to endure. How much of the meaning behind this monumental creation has truly been recovered, and what deeper intentions still remain hidden within the stones of Persepolis? From the monumental terraces of Persepolis, where an empire carved its vision of power into stone, our journey now turns toward the rugged coastline of southwestern Anatolia. Here, between steep cliffs and the waters of the Mediterranean, another ancient landscape preserves a different expression of human memory. Instead of grand palaces built for living rulers, the people of Myra created a city of the dead, one where stone itself became a lasting connection between generations. Along the slopes overlooking the ancient city of Myra, in what is now the Antalya region of Turkey, rows of rock-cut tombs remain carved directly into the face of towering limestone cliffs. From a distance, they appear almost like the entrances to forgotten homes suspended high above the ground. Their carefully shaped doors, carved facades, and architectural details reflect the traditions of the Lycian people, an ancient civilization that flourished in this region for centuries before becoming part of larger Mediterranean powers. The Myra rock tombs were created primarily during the Lycian period, especially between the 5th and 4th centuries BC. The Lycians developed a distinctive funerary tradition in which tombs were carved into natural rock formations, often designed to resemble wooden houses or temples. These structures were not simply places to store remains. They were carefully crafted monuments intended to preserve identity, status, and remembrance. The design of the tombs reveals important clues about Lycian society. Some feature elaborate entrances, columns, and decorative elements that suggest the influence of regional architecture and cultural exchange. The resemblance to wooden buildings is particularly significant, as it may reflect earlier construction traditions that have long since disappeared. Through stone, the Lycians preserved the appearance of structures that were originally made from more fragile materials. Yet, these silent cliffs raise questions that archaeology can only partially answer. Why did the Lycians choose to place their tombs high above the city? Was elevation simply a practical choice, protecting burial places from flooding and disturbance? Or did the height symbolize a closer connection between the deceased and the divine realms? Many historians interpret the tombs as expressions of social hierarchy. Their size, location, and complexity likely reflected the importance of the individuals buried within them. In a society where ancestry and reputation carried great significance, these monuments may have served as permanent statements of family identity and influence. Inside the tombs, however, the evidence is often incomplete. Centuries of activity, looting, and environmental change have removed many objects that could have provided deeper insight into Lycian beliefs. Without extensive written records describing their rituals and ideas about death, researchers must rely on architecture, inscriptions, and comparisons with neighboring cultures. Some more speculative interpretations suggest that the placement and design of certain tombs may contain symbolic meanings connected to astronomy, spiritual transformation, or ancient concepts of the afterlife. These ideas remain debated, as direct evidence is limited. Still, the careful alignment of architecture with landscape continues to inspire questions about how ancient societies understood their relationship with the natural world. The history of Myra did not end with the Lycians. Over time, the city became part of larger civilizations, including the Roman Empire, and later gained importance as a center of early Christianity. These layers of history transformed the region, adding new stories to a landscape already shaped by centuries of human belief. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Myra rock tombs is their endurance. Carved into mountainsides thousands of years ago, they continue to preserve the memory of people whose names and lives are mostly unknown today. The stone remains, but the voices behind those monuments have faded. Standing before these ancient cliffside tombs, one question remains: what personal stories, forgotten traditions, and beliefs about life and death are still waiting to be uncovered within the silent walls of Myra? From the carved cliffs of Myra, where stone preserved the memory of a civilization's relationship with death and ancestry, our journey now moves across the Atlantic to the high valleys of South America. Far from the Mediterranean world, another extraordinary landscape reveals how ancient societies transformed natural formations into places of meaning, ceremony, and connection. In the eastern foothills of the Andes, a massive stone formation continues to challenge researchers with its scale, precision, and unanswered questions. High above the town of Samaipata, in present-day Bolivia, surrounded by green valleys and the distant peaks of the Andes, lies El Fuerte de Samaipata. At first glance, the site appears to be a natural mountain ridge shaped by wind and time. But upon closer inspection, its surface reveals carefully carved channels, geometric patterns, niches, and symbols extending across a vast sandstone rock. Unlike a traditional monument built from separate blocks, this ancient creation was formed by removing and shaping the living stone itself. The origins of Samaipata reach back many centuries, with evidence of human activity in the region long before the arrival of the Inca Empire. Archaeologists believe that the carved rock was an important ceremonial center used by local cultures, particularly the Chane people, before later becoming incorporated into the expanding Inca state during the 15th century. The Incas recognized the importance of the location and transformed the surrounding area into a regional administrative and religious center. The most remarkable feature of the site is the enormous carved sandstone surface known as the El Fuerte rock. Long channels run across its surface, creating patterns that may have been connected to rituals, water ceremonies, astronomical observations, or symbolic representations of the surrounding landscape. Nearby structures suggest that ceremonies, gatherings, and political activities took place around the carved formation. Yet, the exact purpose of these carvings remains uncertain. Were they primarily religious symbols? Did they represent sacred pathways used during ceremonies? Or did their design reflect a deeper understanding of the movements of the sun, moon, and stars? Mainstream archaeological interpretations generally view Samaipata as a sacred ceremonial landscape, where architecture and nature were intentionally combined. The carved rock may have represented a connection between the physical world and spiritual beliefs, a concept found in many Andean cultures. However, the absence of written records from the societies that created the earliest carvings leaves many details open to interpretation. Some more speculative theories have proposed that the precision and complexity of the carvings suggest purposes beyond known ritual practices. Certain researchers and enthusiasts have suggested possible astronomical functions or connections to ancient knowledge systems that have not yet been fully understood. These ideas remain debated, as clear evidence supporting many of these interpretations is limited. The site's later history adds another layer of complexity. When the Inca arrived, they did not erase the earlier significance of Samaipata. Instead, they adapted the location into their own religious and administrative network, demonstrating how sacred places could carry meaning across different cultures and generations. The surrounding landscape also contributed to Samaipata's importance. Positioned between the Andes and the lowland regions of eastern South America, the site occupied a strategic location where different environments and cultures met. It may have served as both a spiritual center and a place of connection between distant communities. Today, the carved rock remains exposed to the elements, its ancient markings slowly shaped by centuries of weathering. Every groove and channel represents human effort, but the intentions behind many of those marks remain uncertain. The people who carved this immense stone surface left behind evidence of their beliefs, yet not a complete explanation of their purpose. Standing above the valleys of Samaipata, surrounded by a landscape that has witnessed countless generations, one question continues to endure. Was this extraordinary monument a sacred map, a ceremonial space, a symbol of power, or something whose true meaning has yet to be discovered? From the carved heights of El Fuerte de Samaipata, where ancient hands transformed a mountain surface into a place of ceremony and meaning, our exploration now returns to the ancient landscapes of the Near East. Here, among the rolling hills and fertile valleys east of the Jordan River, another forgotten settlement reveals a remarkable chapter in early urban development. Khirbet al-Batrawy offers a glimpse into a time when communities were beginning to build fortified cities, organize complex societies, and reshape their environment in ways that would influence the course of human history. Rising above the Zarqa River Valley in modern-day Jordan, Khirbet al-Batrawy occupies a strategic position overlooking routes that connected different regions of the ancient Near East. At first sight, the site appears as a quiet collection of stone remains scattered across a dry landscape. Yet, beneath the surface lies the evidence of a thriving urban center that existed more than 5,000 years ago, during the early Bronze Age. Archaeological investigations have revealed that Khirbet al-Batrawy was established around 3000 BC and developed into a fortified city with impressive defensive walls, towers, gates, and carefully planned buildings. Its location was not accidental. Positioned along important trade routes, the settlement benefited from connections between inland communities and wider networks extending across the Levant. One of the most striking discoveries at the site is the scale of its fortifications. Massive stone walls surrounded the settlement, suggesting a society capable of organizing large groups of workers and coordinating complex construction projects. Such defenses raise important questions about life during this period. Were these walls built primarily to protect valuable resources and trade routes? Were they responses to increasing conflicts between growing cities? Or did they also serve as symbols of authority, demonstrating the power of those who controlled the settlement? Inside the city, archaeologists uncovered residential areas, storage spaces, workshops, and evidence of specialized activities. These discoveries reveal a community far more complex than a simple agricultural village. The people of Khirbet al-Batrawy appear to have participated in economic systems involving production, exchange, and administration. Among the most significant findings were large storage facilities containing pottery and agricultural remains. These discoveries suggest organized management of resources, possibly controlled by emerging forms of leadership. Yet, the exact structure of this society remains uncertain. Did a powerful ruling group direct the city's activities, or did cooperation among families and local communities create this level of organization? The decline of Khirbet al-Batrawy adds another layer of uncertainty. Like several early Bronze Age cities in the region, the settlement eventually experienced destruction and abandonment. Archaeologists have found evidence of burning and collapse, but the reasons behind this event remain debated. Environmental changes, economic disruption, warfare, or shifting trade patterns may all have contributed to the city's decline. Some more speculative interpretations have connected the fate of sites like Khirbet al-Batrawy with broader theories about the transformation of early urban societies. Researchers continue to examine whether the decline of these settlements represented isolated events or part of a larger regional change affecting many communities. While some ideas remain unproven, the evidence suggests a period of significant transition in the ancient Near East. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Khirbet al-Batrawy is its place in the story of humanity's first cities. It represents a moment when people were moving beyond small settlements and creating organized urban environments with defenses, industries, and complex social structures. Standing among the remains of its ancient walls, it is possible to sense both achievement and uncertainty. The builders of Khirbet al-Batrawy left behind a city that reveals their skills and ambitions, yet their voices have largely disappeared. What decisions shaped this remarkable settlement, and what other stories remain buried beneath the stones of this early city? From the fortified walls of Khirbet al-Batrawy, where one of humanity's earliest cities reveals the ambitions and uncertainties of the Bronze Age, our journey now returns to the high landscapes of South America. Here, beneath the vast Andean sky, another monumental site reflects the power of organization, engineering, and belief. In the mountains of Peru, where valleys are separated by dramatic peaks and ancient roads once connected distant communities, the remains of Raqchi preserve the legacy of one of the most sophisticated civilizations of the Americas. At an elevation of more than 3,400 meters above sea level, surrounded by the volcanic landscapes of the Cusco region, Raqchi stands on a plateau overlooking the Vilcanota River Valley. The air is thin, the terrain rugged, and the surrounding mountains dominate the horizon. Yet, within this demanding environment, the Inca created a settlement unlike many others in their vast empire. Its enormous structures, carefully planned spaces, and unusual architecture continue to raise questions about its true purpose and significance. The centerpiece of Raqchi is the massive structure known as the Temple of Viracocha, dedicated to the Inca creator deity Viracocha. Even in its ruined state, the scale of this building remains impressive. A central wall rises more than 15 meters high, constructed with finely shaped stone foundations and large adobe sections above. Along its sides were once rows of enormous columns supporting a vast roof, creating one of the largest known structures built by the Inca. The engineering behind this monument reveals extraordinary knowledge of materials, construction, and environmental adaptation. The builders combined stone and adobe in a region exposed to earthquakes, heavy rainfall, and changing temperatures. This raises a fundamental question. Why invest such effort into creating a structure of this scale in a remote mountain location? Archaeologists generally interpret Raqchi as a major religious and administrative center. The Temple of Viracocha likely served as a ceremonial space where rituals honoring the creator deity took place. The site also contained storage facilities, residential areas, workshops, and ceremonial plazas, suggesting that it was not merely a temple, but a complex settlement connected to the wider organization of the Inca Empire. One of the most remarkable features of Raqchi is the presence of hundreds of circular storage buildings known as kolkas. These structures were carefully designed to preserve food and other resources, taking advantage of natural ventilation and temperature control. Their existence reveals the importance of Raqchi within the economic network of the empire. The Inca stored agricultural products here, possibly distributing them to travelers, officials, soldiers, or communities during times of need. But the scale of these storage facilities creates another layer of intrigue. Why did this location require such extensive reserves? Was Raqchi positioned along a major pilgrimage route, bringing large numbers of visitors who needed support? Was it a military supply center protecting important territories? Or did its importance come from a combination of religious, economic, and political roles? The Inca road system connected distant regions across thousands of kilometers, allowing information, goods, and people to move through some of the most challenging terrain on Earth. Raqchi's location along these routes suggests that it may have played a significant role in maintaining imperial connections. The settlement was not isolated. It existed within a carefully organized network stretching across the Andes. The history of Raqchi also contains traces of transformation and uncertainty. The site was already important before the Inca expanded into the region, and evidence suggests that earlier cultures occupied the area. As the Inca incorporated new territories, they often adapted existing sacred landscapes rather than completely replacing them. This process raises questions about continuity. Did the Inca choose Raqchi because of an older spiritual significance already attached to the location? Or did they create a new center to demonstrate their own authority? The Temple of Wiracocha itself has inspired many interpretations because of its unusual design. Unlike many traditional Inca temples built primarily with carefully fitted stone, this structure used a combination of materials and enormous vertical proportions. Some researchers suggest that its architecture reflected specific religious concepts related to the sky, creation, and the relationship between humans and the natural world. More speculative interpretations have suggested that the layout of Raqchi may contain hidden astronomical or symbolic meanings. Ancient Andean civilizations closely observed celestial movements, using the sun, moon, and stars to organize agricultural cycles and religious ceremonies. While some alignments at Raqchi may reflect intentional planning, the exact extent of astronomical design remains a subject of discussion rather than certainty. The absence of written records from the Inca world makes sites like Raqchi especially fascinating. Much of what researchers know comes from architecture, artifacts, oral traditions recorded after the Spanish arrival, and comparisons with other Andean sites. Each source provides valuable information, but none offers a complete picture of what the builders intended. When Spanish forces reached the Andes in the 16th century, the world that created Raqchi was transformed forever. Many sacred sites were damaged, abandoned, or repurposed, and countless traditions disappeared. Yet, the stone foundations and towering remains of the temple endured, preserving evidence of a civilization that achieved remarkable feats without the use of many technologies known in other parts of the world. Today, visitors walking among the ruins of Raqchi encounter more than ancient architecture. They encounter the remains of a society that understood landscapes as living spaces, where mountains, rivers, temples, and communities were connected through complex systems of meaning. The great walls of the Temple of Wiracocha still stand against the Andean winds, but the full story of Raqchi remains incomplete. The people who designed this extraordinary place left behind a monument of immense scale, yet many of their intentions remain beyond our reach. What deeper purpose guided the creation of this mountain sanctuary, and what knowledge about the Inca world is still waiting to be uncovered among its silent stones? From the towering walls of Raqchi, where the Inca transformed a remote Andean landscape into a center of ceremony and connection, our journey continues deeper into the ancient highlands of South America. Farther across the Altiplano, where the air is thin and the earth stretches beneath an endless sky, another monumental structure rises from the remains of a civilization whose achievements continue to challenge our understanding of early urban development. Here, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, the Akapana Pyramid preserves the ambitions, beliefs, and unanswered questions of the Tiwanaku people. At an altitude of nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, in what is now western Bolivia, the ancient city of Tiwanaku once stood as one of the most influential cultural centers of the Andes. Among its greatest achievements was the Akapana Pyramid, an enormous stepped structure built from earth, stone, and carefully engineered terraces. Today, much of the original monument has been altered by centuries of erosion, reconstruction, and human activity. Yet its remaining foundations still reveal the extraordinary scale of the project. Unlike the sharply pointed pyramids found in other parts of the world, the Akapana was designed as a massive stepped platform, rising approximately 18 meters above the surrounding landscape. Its form resembled a sacred mountain, a concept deeply significant in many Andean traditions where elevated places were believed to connect the earthly world with spiritual forces above. Construction of the Akapana began around the 1st centuries BC, during the period when Tiwanaku was developing into a powerful regional center. The builders moved enormous quantities of earth and stone to create a structure that required advanced planning, engineering, and coordinated labor. The effort involved was immense, raising questions about the society that organized such a project. How did Tiwanaku leaders mobilize enough workers to reshape an entire landscape? What beliefs inspired generations of people to dedicate their labor to this monumental creation? Archaeologists generally interpret the Akapana as a ceremonial and religious structure rather than a simple architectural monument. Evidence suggests that water played a central role in its design. A sophisticated network of channels once carried water through the pyramid, possibly creating symbolic flows connected to fertility, agriculture, and sacred ceremonies. This relationship between architecture and water appears throughout Andean cultures. Rivers, springs, and rainfall were not viewed only as physical resources, but also as elements connected to spiritual balance and survival. At Akapana, the movement of water may have represented forces that sustained life across the high plateau. Yet, many aspects of the pyramid remain uncertain. The exact rituals performed there are unknown, as Tiwanaku left no written texts that modern researchers can directly interpret. Instead, archaeologists must rely on architecture, artifacts, and comparisons with later Andean traditions to reconstruct the possible meanings behind the structure. The pyramid's design has also attracted attention because of its unusual precision. Some sections reveal carefully cut stonework, while others consist of massive earthen platforms. This combination suggests a complex building process in which different materials served different purposes. But how did Tiwanaku engineers achieve such coordination without the tools and technologies associated with later civilizations? Some more speculative interpretations have focused on the possibility that Akapana contained astronomical or symbolic alignments. Ancient Andean societies carefully observed celestial movements, using them to guide agricultural calendars, ceremonies, and social organization. Researchers continue to examine whether certain aspects of Tiwanaku architecture reflected deliberate connections with the sun, moon, or seasonal cycles. However, the evidence remains incomplete, and interpretations vary. The broader city of Tiwanaku adds further complexity to the story. Nearby structures, including the monumental Gate of the Sun and the Kalasasaya Temple complex, demonstrate an advanced understanding of stone carving, spatial organization, and symbolic representation. Together, these structures suggest that Tiwanaku was not simply a settlement, but a carefully designed ceremonial landscape. One of the enduring questions surrounding Akapana concerns the civilization that created it. At its height, between approximately 500 and 900 AD, Tiwanaku influenced vast areas of the Andes through trade, religion, and cultural exchange. Yet, after centuries of prosperity, the city declined. Scholars continue to debate the reasons behind this transformation, with possible explanations including prolonged drought, environmental changes, political instability, or shifts in regional power. The decline of Tiwanaku remains one of the great questions of Andean archaeology. A society capable of creating such monumental architecture, managing complex agriculture, and influencing distant regions eventually faded, leaving behind only fragments of its former world. Today, the Akapana Pyramid stands as a reminder of both human achievement and historical uncertainty. The stones and earth preserve evidence of engineering skill, spiritual beliefs, and social organization, but they do not reveal every thought of the people who built them. Standing on the ancient terraces of Akapana, beneath the vast Bolivian sky, it is possible to sense the scale of the civilization that once gathered here. Yet, the central mystery remains. What deeper meaning did this enormous artificial mountain hold for the people of Tiwanaku, and how much of its original purpose is still waiting to be revealed beneath the layers of time? From the immense terraces of Akapana, where the Tiwanaku people shaped earth and stone into a sacred mountain above the high plains, our journey now moves farther back into the early history of Andean civilization. Long before the rise of the Inca, and centuries before many of the great imperial centers of South America emerged, another culture created a place where architecture, ritual, sound, and belief were woven together. Deep in the mountains of Peru, surrounded by dramatic valleys and powerful rivers, Chavín de Huántar preserves the remains of one of the earliest great ceremonial centers of the Andes. At the meeting point of the Mosna and Huachexa rivers in the Ancash region of Peru, Chavín de Huántar rests within a narrow mountain valley at an elevation of more than 3,100 meters above sea level. The landscape itself is striking. Steep green slopes rise around the settlement, while the sound of flowing water echoes through the surrounding cliffs. For the people who built this place, the location may have held more than practical importance. The convergence of rivers, mountains, and natural forces appears to have been central to the identity of the site. The ceremonial complex began developing around 1200 BC, making it one of the oldest major religious centers in the Andes. Long before the political expansion of later Andean states, Chavín became a place where communities from distant regions gathered, exchanged ideas, and participated in rituals that connected them to a shared cultural tradition. The architecture of Chavín de Huántar reveals extraordinary planning. Massive stone platforms, underground galleries, sunken plazas, and carefully constructed passageways created a complex environment unlike ordinary settlements. The builders used precisely shaped stones and designed the site with a deep understanding of movement, sound, and atmosphere. Perhaps the most famous feature of Chavín is the lanzón, a carved stone sculpture hidden inside the oldest section of the temple. Standing more than 4 meters tall, the lanzón depicts a powerful figure combining human and animal characteristics, including features associated with jaguars, snakes, and birds of prey. Its exact meaning remains uncertain, but many archaeologists believe it represented a central religious figure connected to transformation, authority, and the forces of nature. The placement of the lanzón deep within the temple adds another layer of intrigue. It was not designed to be viewed by large crowds. Instead, access required movement through narrow underground corridors, creating an experience that may have been deliberately controlled and symbolic. Why place such an important image in darkness beneath the ground? Was the journey inward meant to represent a spiritual transformation, a connection with unseen forces, or a passage between different worlds? Archaeologists have discovered that the internal galleries of Chavín were not simply storage spaces. Their design appears connected to ritual experiences. Some passages amplified sounds, creating echoes and unusual acoustic effects. Researchers have suggested that priests may have used these features during ceremonies, combining architecture, music, and movement to create powerful experiences for participants. These interpretations fit within broader understandings of ancient Andean religion, where sacred places were often designed to engage multiple senses. However, because the Chavín people left no written records, many details of their beliefs remain uncertain. The meaning of their symbols must be reconstructed through artistic patterns, artifacts, and comparisons with later traditions. The site's influence across the Andes is another enduring mystery. Objects displaying Chavín artistic styles have been discovered hundreds of kilometers away, suggesting that the culture's ideas traveled widely. But how did this influence spread? Was Chavín controlling a large political territory, or was it a religious center whose importance came through pilgrimage and shared belief? Most researchers today view Chavín de Huántar as a major ceremonial and ideological center, rather than an empire in the traditional sense. People may have traveled there seeking knowledge, participating in rituals, or strengthening connections between distant communities. The power of Chavín may have come not from military force, but from its ability to shape ideas. Still, some questions remain open. The remarkable similarities between Chavín imagery and later Andean religious traditions have led some researchers to consider whether the site preserved much older beliefs that continued evolving over thousands of years. Others have explored whether certain architectural features reflect sophisticated observations of natural cycles, including the movement of celestial bodies and seasonal changes. These interpretations vary, and many remain subjects of discussion rather than established conclusions. Yet, the uncertainty surrounding Chavín is part of what makes the site so significant. Each discovery adds information, but it also reveals how much remains unknown about the people who created it. The decline of Chavín's influence around the first centuries BC introduces another unanswered chapter. The ceremonial center was gradually abandoned, and new cultural traditions emerged throughout the Andes. Whether this transition occurred because of environmental changes, shifting beliefs, social transformations, or other factors remains debated. Today, the stone corridors of Chavín de Huántar still preserve traces of a world that existed long before the famous civilizations that followed. The carved figures, hidden passages, and carefully designed spaces reveal a society deeply connected to ritual and the natural environment. Walking through the remains of this ancient sanctuary, one question continues to linger. What experiences unfolded within these darkened chambers, and how much of the knowledge, symbolism, and meaning created by the Chavín people is still waiting to be understood beneath the mountain stones? From the hidden corridors of Chavín de Huántar, where ancient builders shaped stone and darkness into a place of ritual and transformation, our journey now moves across continents to one of the most enigmatic landscapes of the ancient Near East. Far from the high mountains of Peru, beside the southern shores of the Dead Sea, lies a settlement that preserves the remains of an early urban community whose rise and disappearance have continued to fascinate archaeologists for generations. In the harsh wilderness of the Jordan Valley, surrounded by barren hills and a landscape shaped by salt, wind, and time, the ruins of edh-Dhra emerge from the earth. At first glance, the site appears almost empty, a collection of weathered stones scattered across a dry plain. Yet, beneath this landscape lies evidence of one of the earliest fortified settlements in the region, a community that existed thousands of years ago during a period when humans were beginning to develop new forms of urban life. edh-Dhra was located near the southeastern edge of the Dead Sea and became an important settlement during the early Bronze Age, beginning around 3200 BC. Archaeological investigations have revealed evidence of defensive walls, residential areas, industrial activity, and one of the largest ancient cemetery complexes known from this period. The scale of the site suggests that it was not simply a small agricultural village, but a significant community connected to wider networks of trade and cultural exchange. One of the most striking features of edh-Dhra is its extensive cemetery. Thousands of burial structures, including shaft tombs and large underground chambers, surround the settlement. These burial places contain pottery, tools, ornaments, and other objects that provide glimpses into the lives and traditions of the people who lived there. The sheer size of the cemetery raises important questions. Why did this community invest such enormous effort into honoring its dead? Did these burial practices reflect beliefs about ancestry and social identity? Were certain families or groups using these monuments to preserve their status across generations? Archaeologists generally interpret edh-Dhra as part of a broader pattern of early Bronze Age urban development in the southern Levant. Communities during this period began building fortified settlements, developing specialized crafts and participating in long-distance trade. The location of Bab edh-Dhra provided access to important resources, including agricultural land, minerals, and routes connecting different regions. The settlement's relationship with its environment is also significant. Located near the Dead Sea, Bab edh-Dhra existed in a challenging landscape where water availability and climate conditions would have played a major role in daily life. Researchers continue to examine how environmental changes may have influenced the development and eventual decline of communities throughout the region. One of the most debated aspects of Bab edh-Dhra is its possible connection to ancient accounts describing destroyed cities near the Dead Sea. For centuries, some researchers and historians have compared archaeological sites in this region with places mentioned in religious traditions, particularly stories associated with Sodom and Gomorrah. These connections remain highly debated, as there is no definitive archaeological evidence identifying Bab edh-Dhra as one of those cities. Most archaeologists approach these comparisons cautiously, focusing instead on the physical evidence left behind. The destruction layers, abandoned buildings, and signs of fire found at some early Bronze Age sites have encouraged discussions about possible causes, including warfare, earthquakes, economic collapse, or environmental pressures. More speculative interpretations have suggested that unusual geological events around the Dead Sea region may have contributed to the destruction of ancient settlements. Some have proposed natural disasters such as earthquakes or sudden environmental changes as possible explanations for dramatic endings recorded in regional traditions. While geological activity in the area is well documented, connecting specific events to individual settlements remains difficult. The mystery surrounding Bab edh-Dhra is not only about how the settlement ended, but also about how it functioned while it existed. The remains suggest a society capable of organization, craftsmanship, and long-distance interaction. Yet, the voices of its inhabitants have disappeared. Without written records from the community itself, researchers must reconstruct their world through fragments preserved in soil and stone. Artifacts discovered at the site reveal connections with distant regions, showing that Bab edh-Dhra was part of a larger world of exchange. Pottery styles, materials, and burial objects indicate interaction between communities across the ancient Near East. These discoveries challenge the idea that early settlements existed in isolation, and instead reveal a landscape filled with movement and communication. The decline of Bab edh-Dhra remains part of a larger historical transformation that affected many early Bronze Age communities. Around the end of the 3rd millennium BC, numerous settlements in the region were abandoned or dramatically changed. Scholars continue to debate the reasons behind this widespread shift, with possible explanations involving climate variation, changes in trade networks, political instability, or combinations of multiple factors. Today, the ruins of Bab edh-Dhra stand quietly near the Dead Sea, preserving traces of a society that existed at the dawn of urban civilization. The burial chambers, broken walls, and scattered artifacts reveal a community that invested deeply in both life and remembrance. Yet, the questions surrounding this ancient settlement remain. Who were the people who built their homes and tombs beside the Dead Sea? What events transformed their thriving community into an archaeological record of abandonment? And how much of their story is still waiting beneath the desert soil, hidden within the remains of Bab edh-Dhra? From the windswept plains near the Dead Sea, where Bab edh-Dhra preserves the remains of one of humanity's earliest urban communities, our journey now moves northward into the landscapes of ancient Upper Mesopotamia. Here, along the fertile banks of the Kabur River, another settlement emerged that would transform our understanding of early societies. Beneath the soil of Tel Halaf lies the story of a culture whose artistic achievements appeared centuries before many of the great civilizations traditionally associated with complex urban life. In the northeastern region of modern-day Syria, surrounded by open plains and agricultural fields, the ancient site of Tel Halaf rises as a quiet reminder of a distant era. Unlike the massive imperial capitals that would later dominate Mesopotamia, Tel Halaf began as a smaller settlement during the Neolithic period. Yet, the discoveries made here revealed a society with remarkable creativity, advanced craftsmanship, and a distinctive artistic tradition that continues to capture the attention of archaeologists. The settlement became famous in the early 20th century, after excavations led by German archaeologist Max von Oppenheim uncovered a wealth of unusual artifacts and monumental structures. Beginning in 1911, excavations revealed a palace complex, decorated stone sculptures, painted pottery, and architectural remains that belonged to a culture now known as the Halaf culture. The Halaf culture flourished between approximately 6000 and 5000 BC, making it one of the earliest known cultural traditions in northern Mesopotamia. At a time when many communities were still organized around farming villages, the people of Tel Halaf created objects of extraordinary artistic quality. Their pottery, often decorated with intricate geometric patterns and images of animals, represent some of the finest ceramic work of the ancient Near East. These painted vessels raise fascinating questions about the society that produced them. Were they primarily used in everyday life, or did their detailed designs serve symbolic or ceremonial purposes? Did the patterns communicate shared beliefs, social identity, or connections between different communities? Archaeologists generally view Tel Halaf as evidence of a highly skilled agricultural society that developed sophisticated traditions without relying on the large-scale political structures seen in later civilizations. The settlement demonstrates that artistic achievement and social complexity did not suddenly appear with the rise of cities and empires. Instead, they developed gradually through generations of innovation. One of the most remarkable discoveries at Tel Halaf was the presence of monumental stone sculptures known as orthostats. These carved slabs depicted animals, mythical creatures, and human figures, revealing a visual language unlike anything else found in the region at that time. The purpose of these sculptures remains uncertain. Were they religious symbols, representations of powerful ancestors, or expressions of a community's relationship with the natural world? The uncertainty surrounding Tel Halaf extends beyond its artwork. The people who created this culture left behind no written records, meaning their beliefs and social organization must be reconstructed from physical remains alone. Archaeologists can identify patterns in settlement design, trade connections, and craftsmanship, but the thoughts and intentions behind these creations remain more difficult to recover. The discovery of Tel Halaf also challenged older assumptions about the origins of civilization. For much of modern history, scholars often focused on southern Mesopotamia as the primary birthplace of urban development and cultural innovation. Tel Halaf demonstrated that northern regions had already developed complex artistic and technological traditions long before the rise of famous city-states such as Ur and Babylon. The influence of Tel Halaf appears to have extended across a wide region. Similar pottery styles and artistic features have been discovered in distant settlements, suggesting networks of communication and exchange. But the exact nature of these connections remains uncertain. Were communities spreading ideas through trade? Were people migrating between regions? Or were similar traditions developing independently in different areas? Some more speculative interpretations have suggested that the sophistication of Halaf art reflects deeper symbolic systems that may have influenced later Mesopotamian beliefs. Others have proposed that certain motifs represent early forms of religious expression that continued to evolve throughout the ancient Near East. These possibilities remain subjects of research, as direct evidence connecting Tel Halaf to later traditions is limited. The later history of the site adds another layer of complexity. Thousands of years after the Halaf culture declined, the location continued to hold importance. During the early 1st millennium BC, an Aramean ruler named Khapara established a palace at the site, creating a new phase of occupation and leaving behind additional artistic achievements. This later palace, with its carved stone reliefs, demonstrates that the location retained symbolic importance long after the original Halaf community disappeared. The story of Tel Halaf is also a reminder of how fragile the archaeological record can be. Many discoveries from the site were damaged during conflicts and the destruction of museums in the 20th century. Yet, extensive restoration efforts have recovered and preserved many fragments, allowing researchers to continue studying a culture that once seemed almost impossible to reconstruct. Today, Tel Halaf stands as a symbol of both discovery and uncertainty. Its pottery, sculptures, and architectural remains reveal a society capable of extraordinary creativity, yet many aspects of its identity remain beyond our reach. Among the quiet fields of Upper Mesopotamia, the remains of Tel Halaf continue to raise the same questions that have followed archaeologists for more than a century. Who were the people who created these remarkable works of art? What meanings were carried within their symbols and designs? And how much of this early chapter of human creativity is still waiting to be uncovered beneath the layers of time? From the forgotten archives of ancient Syria, where lost kingdoms were preserved beneath layers of earth, our journey now crosses oceans and continents toward another mystery carved not into clay, but into stone. High in the Andes Mountains, above the ancient city of Cusco in modern-day Peru, a massive stone fortress rests against the sky. Surrounded by steep hills and overlooking the valley below, Sacsayhuamán appears almost impossible at first sight. Its enormous walls stretch across the landscape in powerful zigzag patterns, formed from some of the largest carefully fitted stones ever used in the Americas. Here, where thin mountain air meets the silence of the Andes, the stones seem to carry a question that has fascinated visitors for centuries. How did ancient builders move and shape these colossal blocks with such extraordinary precision? And what purpose did this immense structure truly serve? Sacsayhuamán is one of the most remarkable achievements of the Inca civilization, a civilization that rose rapidly across western South America and created one of the largest empires in the Americas before European contact. Yet, even with modern archaeology and engineering studies, the site continues to inspire curiosity because of the scale, accuracy, and mystery surrounding its construction. The first impression is one of strength. The walls appear almost like waves of stone frozen in motion. Massive limestone blocks, some weighing many tons, are arranged so precisely that even a thin blade cannot easily pass between them. Unlike many modern structures that rely on mortar, the builders of Sacsayhuamán used a technique known as ashlar masonry, shaping stones so that they lock together through careful cutting and placement. The result is not simply a wall, it is a puzzle of engineering. Each stone is unique, shaped to fit the stones around it, creating a structure designed to endure earthquakes, time, and the harsh conditions of the Andes. But the true mystery begins when we ask a simple question. How? How did the Inca achieve such precision without modern machines? The traditional archaeological explanation reveals an impressive story of human skill rather than lost technology. The Inca had generations of experience working with stone. They used tools made from harder materials, including other stones and metals available in the region, along with techniques involving abrasion, repeated testing, and careful adjustment. The process was slow. It required patience. It required extraordinary organization. Thousands of workers would have been involved in quarrying, transporting, shaping, and placing the stones. The construction of Sacsayhuamán was not the achievement of a single ruler or a single generation. It was the result of a highly organized society capable of mobilizing enormous resources toward a shared vision. But even understanding the methods does not completely remove the sense of wonder, because the stones themselves remain. Some of them are enormous. Some fit together with remarkable complexity. And the landscape raises another question. Why build something of such scale on this particular mountain above Cusco? To understand Sacsayhuamán, we must first understand the Inca view of the world. For the Inca, Cusco was not simply a city. It was the heart of their empire, a sacred center believed to have been established according to divine principles. The surrounding landscape carried spiritual meaning, and architecture was often designed to reflect relationships between humans, nature, and the cosmos. Sacsayhuamán appears to have been part of this larger vision. Some scholars believe it functioned as a fortress, especially because of its defensive position overlooking Cusco. Its elevated location and massive walls would have provided a strategic advantage during times of conflict. But the site may have served more than one purpose. It may also have been a ceremonial center, a place connected to religious events, royal rituals, and important gatherings. This dual identity creates another layer of mystery. Was Sacsayhuamán a military stronghold, a sacred monument, a symbol of imperial power, or perhaps all three at the same time? The Inca did not separate these ideas in the same way modern societies often do. A structure could represent political authority while also carrying spiritual significance. A mountain could be a geographic feature and a sacred presence. A stone wall could protect a city while also expressing a deeper connection between people and the natural world. The most famous parts of Sacsayhuamán are its enormous zigzag walls, which many researchers believe may have had symbolic meaning. Some interpretations suggest that the shape may represent the teeth of a puma, an animal with great importance in Andean traditions. According to some theories, the city of Cusco itself was designed in the shape of a puma, with Sacsayhuamán representing the animal's head. Whether this design was intentional remains debated, but it reflects an important idea. Inca architecture was often connected to symbolism, astronomy, and the sacred landscape. The site also raises questions about time. The Inca Empire itself was relatively young compared with many ancient civilizations. It expanded rapidly during the 15th century AD, reaching across much of the Andes before the arrival of Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century. Yet, within this short period, the Inca created roads, administrative systems, agricultural terraces, and monumental architecture across thousands of miles. How did such a powerful civilization develop so quickly? And how did its builders acquire such advanced knowledge of engineering and construction? Some answers can be found in the civilizations that came before them. The Inca inherited and expanded upon earlier Andean traditions. Long before the Inca, cultures such as the Tiwanaku and other regional societies developed sophisticated methods of stonework, agriculture, and urban planning. The Inca did not emerge from nothing. They absorbed knowledge from the ancient cultures that came before them, transforming older traditions into something larger and more unified. Yet, Sacsayhuamán remains one of the places where imagination often reaches beyond the available evidence. Over the years, some alternative theories have suggested that the stones are too precisely fitted to have been shaped using traditional methods. Some have proposed unknown technologies, lost civilizations, or forgotten knowledge as possible explanations. These ideas often come from the genuine sense of amazement inspired by the site. When standing before these massive walls, it is easy to understand why people ask whether something has been overlooked. But archaeological research continues to support the ability of Andean civilizations to create extraordinary monuments using human skill, organization, and accumulated knowledge. The mystery is not necessarily that the builders lacked technology. The mystery may be that their technology was different from our own. A civilization does not need modern machines to achieve remarkable things. It needs knowledge, coordination, time, and a reason powerful enough to bring thousands of people together. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Sacsayhuamán is what happened after its creators were gone. When Spanish forces entered Cusco in the 16th century, they recognized the value of the stonework. Many stones from Sacsayhuamán were removed and reused in colonial buildings. Over time, parts of the original complex disappeared. What remains today is only a portion of what once stood. And yet, even what survived is enough to inspire questions. What did the complete structure look like? What ceremonies took place within its walls? What knowledge was passed from one generation of builders to another? The Inca did not leave behind written records describing every detail of Sacsayhuamán's construction. Much of what we know comes from archaeology, historical accounts written after the Spanish conquest, and the careful study of the stones themselves. But stones can only tell part of a story. They reveal measurements, materials, techniques. They do not reveal every thought of the people who placed them. They do not tell us what a worker felt while lifting a massive block into position. They do not tell us what a ruler imagined while standing before the completed walls. They do not tell us the prayers, hopes, or fears connected to this enormous monument. Today, Sacsayhuamán remains one of the most powerful reminders that ancient civilizations were capable of achievements that still challenge our understanding. Its stones have survived earthquakes that damaged many later structures. Its walls continue to overlook Cusco, silent witnesses to the rise and fall of an empire. And perhaps that silence is what makes the site so captivating. Because the greatest mystery of Sacsayhuamán may not be how the stones were moved. It may be why humans, across different cultures and different ages, continue to create monuments that reach beyond practical needs and become symbols of something greater. Standing among these ancient walls, beneath the endless Andes sky, one question remains. How much of the knowledge behind Sacsayhuamán has truly been recovered, and how much remains hidden within the stones, waiting for us to understand? Leaving behind the stone cities of southern Africa, our search for the forgotten chapters of human history now moves westward and northward, toward the ancient landscapes of the Near East. Here, beneath the quiet fields of northern Syria, the remains of a city once lost to time reveal a civilization that challenged what historians thought they knew about the ancient world. Across the open plains of the modern-day Aleppo region, a large mound rises from the landscape. At first, it appears to be only another hill shaped by centuries of wind, rain, and dust. But beneath this ordinary surface lies the buried remains of a once powerful city that stood at the crossroads of early civilization. This is Mardikh. For thousands of years, the city hidden beneath this mound was forgotten. Its walls collapsed, its buildings disappeared beneath layers of soil, and its name vanished from human memory. Yet, beneath the earth, a remarkable archive remained sealed away, a city of palaces, temples, trade routes, and thousands of written records waiting to tell its story. But the discovery of Mardikh did more than reveal an ancient settlement. It revealed a lost kingdom, a kingdom that had once existed alongside some of the most famous civilizations of the ancient world. A kingdom whose rulers, merchants, and scribes left behind evidence of a society far more complex than many had imagined. The ancient city beneath Mardikh is known as edh-Dhra, one of the most important discoveries in Near Eastern archaeology. For centuries, historians had known of great powers such as Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Hittites. But the discovery of edh-Dhra revealed another major player in the ancient world, one whose influence had been almost completely erased from collective memory. How could an entire kingdom disappear? How could a city that once controlled vast networks of trade and diplomacy become nothing more than a forgotten mound in the Syrian landscape? The story begins in the 1960s, when Italian archaeologists began excavations at Tel Mardikh. What they uncovered transformed the understanding of ancient Syria. Beneath layers of earth, they discovered monumental structures, including a massive palace complex. But the most extraordinary discovery came from the remains of the royal archives. Thousands of clay tablets were found, many preserved by the destruction that buried the city. Written in cuneiform script, these tablets contained administrative records, economic documents, vocabulary lists, diplomatic texts, and information about the political life of Ebla. Suddenly, a forgotten civilization began to speak again. The tablets revealed that Ebla had been a major power during the 3rd millennium BC, reaching its height around 2500 to 2300 BC. At its peak, the city was not an isolated settlement. It was a center of administration and commerce, connected through trade routes that stretched across the ancient Near East. Its merchants exchanged goods such as textiles, metals, timber, and precious materials. Its rulers maintained relationships with neighboring kingdoms. Its scribes carefully recorded transactions, agreements, and events. The picture that emerged was not of a primitive settlement, but of a sophisticated urban society. A city with bureaucracy, a city with diplomacy, a city with knowledge preserved through writing. And yet, despite these discoveries, many mysteries remain. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Ebla is that its existence changed the way scholars understood the ancient world. Before Tel Mardikh revealed its secrets, many researchers focused primarily on the civilizations along the Nile and the Tigris-Euphrates rivers. Ebla demonstrated that other powerful societies existed between these famous centers, creating their own traditions, economies, and political systems. It showed that the ancient world was not built by only a few famous civilizations. It was a much larger and more connected landscape. But who exactly were the people of Ebla? Their tablets provide many details about their activities, yet they also create new questions. What did ordinary life look like inside the city? What beliefs guided their rulers? How did they understand their place in the universe? The archives reveal names, numbers, and transactions, but they only offer fragments of the human experience behind them. Some of the most intriguing evidence from Ebla concerns its language. The tablets contain texts written in Sumerian, as well as a local language now known as Eblid, an early Semitic language. These writings provide valuable information about the development of ancient languages and the connections between different cultures of the region. But language can also reveal something deeper. It reveals contact, exchange, movement. The people of Ebla were not living behind closed borders. Their words show a world where ideas traveled alongside goods. Merchants, diplomats, and travelers carried knowledge across enormous distances, connecting societies that modern borders separate but ancient people understood as part of one interconnected world. And then came the destruction. Around the middle of the 23rd century BC, Ebla was destroyed. Archaeological evidence shows signs of a violent event, including burned buildings and collapsed structures. But who was responsible? For generations, scholars have debated the exact circumstances of Ebla's fall. Some evidence suggests conflict with the Akkadian Empire, one of the most powerful states of ancient Mesopotamia. The expansion of Akkadian rulers, particularly under figures such as Sargon of Akkad, may have brought Ebla into a period of war and instability. Other theories suggest that internal changes, economic pressures, or regional conflicts may have contributed to its decline. The truth may never be completely known. The destruction that ended Ebla's first great period also helped preserve its memory. The fire that consumed parts of the city hardened many clay tablets, protecting them for thousands of years beneath the ruins. A catastrophe became a time capsule. A moment of destruction became a doorway into the past. But among the discoveries at Tel Mardikh, few have inspired more curiosity than the references found in the archives that some have attempted to connect with later historical and religious traditions. Over the years, some researchers and commentators have debated whether certain names or locations mentioned in the Ebla tablets relate to figures or places known from later traditions. These interpretations remain controversial, and many scholars caution against drawing direct connections without stronger evidence. Yet, the debate reveals something fascinating about ancient history. A single discovery can create new questions as quickly as it answers old ones. The tablets of Ebla do not simply provide information. They challenge us to reconsider how civilizations emerge, interact, and disappear. They remind us that history is often incomplete, not because nothing happened, but because the evidence has been buried, scattered, or forgotten. The ruins of Tel Mardikh also raise another mystery. Why did some cities survive in historical memory while others vanished? Why do we remember certain ancient kingdoms while others disappear for thousands of years? Perhaps survival in history depends not only on greatness, but on chance. A lost archive, a preserved building, an archaeological discovery at the right moment. Without the excavation of Tel Mardikh, Ebla might have remained unknown forever. And even today, only a portion of the ancient city has been fully understood. Beneath the layers of soil, more structures may remain hidden. More documents may still wait to be uncovered. More details about the lives of its people may be buried just beyond the reach of current knowledge. The mystery of Ebla is not simply that it disappeared. The deeper mystery is that it existed at all, a powerful kingdom whose memory was almost erased, yet whose voice survived through thousands of fragile pieces of clay. Standing before the quiet mound of Tel Mardikh today, it is difficult to imagine the city that once occupied this landscape. The sounds of merchants negotiating in crowded markets are gone. The voices of scribes recording the affairs of kings are silent. The footsteps of rulers who once shaped the fate of a kingdom have faded into the earth. But beneath the surface, the remains of their world still wait. And as archaeologists continue to uncover the secrets of this forgotten city, one question remains. How many other lost civilizations are still hidden beneath ordinary landscapes, waiting for the moment when humanity finally hears their stories again? As the journey through the forgotten chapters of ancient humanity continues, we move southward, across vast landscapes where the echoes of lost civilizations still linger beneath the earth. Far from the great stone cities of Egypt, Mesopotamia, or the Mediterranean world, hidden among the rolling hills of southeastern Africa, stands a monument that challenges the way we imagine the ancient past. Rising from the highlands of modern-day Zimbabwe, surrounded by open grasslands and scattered trees, are the massive stone walls of Great Zimbabwe. They do not tower like the pyramids, nor do they carry the carved faces of ancient kings. Instead, they stretch outward in silent curves, built from carefully arranged granite blocks that fit together without mortar. The stones seem to flow with the landscape itself, as if the builders were not conquering the environment, but working in harmony with it. For centuries, this abandoned city stood as a mystery. Who built it? Why was it created? And how did a civilization that left behind no written records construct one of the largest stone structures in Africa? The first site of Great Zimbabwe raises a question that has followed explorers, archaeologists, and historians for generations. How could such a sophisticated city emerge in a place that many outsiders once wrongly assumed had no ancient urban traditions? Today, archaeological evidence tells a remarkable story. Great Zimbabwe was built by the ancestors of the Shona people, primarily between the 11th and 15th centuries A.D. At its height, it was the center of a powerful kingdom that controlled trade networks stretching across southern Africa. The city was not a forgotten outpost on the edge of the world. It was a major political, economic, and cultural hub. The name itself reveals something about its significance. Zimbabwe is believed to come from a Shona phrase often translated as stone houses or houses of stone. The name reflects what makes the site so extraordinary: its immense dry stone architecture, carefully constructed from millions of pieces of granite shaped and placed by skilled builders. The most famous area of the site is the Great Enclosure, a massive circular structure surrounded by walls reaching several meters high. Its outer wall curves for hundreds of meters, creating one of the largest ancient structures in sub-Saharan Africa. Inside, archaeologists have discovered passageways, towers, living spaces, and evidence of ceremonial activity. But the stones themselves are only part of the mystery. A city of this size requires more than impressive architecture. It requires organization. It requires skilled labor, agricultural systems, political authority, and access to resources. Great Zimbabwe suggests the existence of a highly structured society capable of coordinating thousands of people over generations. So, who were the people behind this achievement? For much of history, the answer was distorted by colonial-era beliefs. When European explorers encountered Great Zimbabwe in the late 19th century, some refused to accept that local African civilizations could have created such a complex monument. Various theories were proposed, claiming that the city must have been built by outsiders from distant lands. Some suggested ancient Phoenicians. Others connected it to biblical kingdoms or civilizations from the Middle East. These ideas were not based on strong archaeological evidence, but they reflected the assumptions and prejudices of the time. As scientific investigation advanced, those theories lost support. Archaeological studies, artifacts, and cultural evidence demonstrated that Great Zimbabwe was an African creation, built by local communities with their own knowledge, traditions, and innovations. Yet, even after many questions were answered, mysteries remained. One of the most fascinating aspects of Great Zimbabwe is its connection to a vast international trading network. Archaeologists have uncovered objects that reveal contact with distant regions, including Chinese porcelain, glass beads, and other imported goods. These discoveries show that Great Zimbabwe was connected to trade routes reaching across the Indian Ocean. Gold appears to have played a major role in this exchange. The surrounding region was rich in gold deposits, and the kingdom likely became wealthy through the mining and trade of this precious resource. Goods moved between the interior of Africa and coastal trading cities, connecting Great Zimbabwe to a much larger world. But how exactly did this trade operate? How far did the influence of Great Zimbabwe extend? And what did life look like inside the city when it was alive? Unlike many ancient civilizations, the people of Great Zimbabwe left behind no written chronicles describing their rulers, beliefs, or daily lives. There are no royal inscriptions explaining their ambitions. No preserved texts reveal the names of their kings or the stories of their struggles. Instead, researchers must read the evidence hidden in the landscape. The arrangement of structures suggests that Great Zimbabwe was not simply a settlement. It appears to have been a place of political power and spiritual importance. The elevated areas of the city may have been associated with elite residences and rituals, while the Great Enclosure may have served symbolic or ceremonial purposes. Among the most famous discoveries from the site are the Zimbabwe birds, carved soapstone figures depicting birds perched on pillars. Their exact meaning remains uncertain, but they are believed to have held deep cultural significance. They may have represented ancestors, spiritual forces, or symbols of authority. Standing today, these mysterious stone birds raise another question. What beliefs guided the people who created them? What stories did they tell around fires beneath the African sky? What ceremonies took place behind the enormous walls? And what knowledge has disappeared because it was never written down? The decline of Great Zimbabwe adds another layer to the mystery. By the 15th century, the city was gradually abandoned. Archaeologists believe several factors may have contributed to its decline, including changes in trade routes, environmental pressures, political shifts, and the limitations of local resources. The population may have moved elsewhere, carrying their traditions into new kingdoms that followed. But abandonment does not always mean disappearance. The people did not vanish. Their descendants continued to live in the region, maintaining cultural traditions connected to the landscape. The ruins remained as a powerful reminder of a civilization whose achievements had been overlooked for centuries. Still, some questions continue to invite speculation. Why was Great Zimbabwe built in this exact location? Was its design purely practical, or did the arrangement of walls and structures carry hidden symbolic meanings? Did the city serve only as a political capital, or was it also a sacred center connected to beliefs about ancestors and the spiritual world? Some alternative theories have suggested that Great Zimbabwe may hold connections to even older unknown civilizations or lost traditions. These ideas often go beyond what archaeological evidence can confirm, and researchers generally find no need for explanations involving outside builders or forgotten empires. Yet, the persistence of these theories reveals something important. Humans are naturally drawn to mysteries, especially when confronted with achievements that seem to rise from silence. Perhaps the true mystery of Great Zimbabwe is not who built it. Modern archaeology has answered that question. The deeper mystery is how much more remains hidden about the people who created it. Every stone represents a decision. Every wall reflects knowledge passed from one generation to another. Every artifact offers a glimpse into a world that existed centuries ago, yet still feels close enough to touch. Walking among the ruins today, it is possible to imagine the sounds that once filled this place. Merchants arriving with goods from distant shores, craftsmen shaping stone and metal, families gathering within the walls, and leaders making decisions that shape the future of their kingdom. But the voices themselves are gone. The city remains. And beneath the ancient stones of Great Zimbabwe, one question continues to echo through time. How many stories of human achievement are still waiting to be uncovered, hidden beneath the landscapes we think we already understand? Beyond the silent walls of Great Zimbabwe, the story of southern Africa's ancient kingdoms continues. The stones of one forgotten city lead us toward another landscape where power, trade, and mystery once converged. Here, among the dry valleys and open plains of southwestern Zimbabwe, another extraordinary settlement waits beneath the African sun. Spread across a series of low hills near the city of Bulawayo are the Khami Ruins, the remains of a once thriving capital that rose after the decline of Great Zimbabwe. Unlike towering monuments built to dominate the horizon, Khami reveals itself slowly. Its stone platforms, winding walls, and carefully constructed terraces blend into the landscape, creating the feeling of a city that was never completely abandoned, only placed into a long and quiet sleep. At first glance, Khami may appear less dramatic than other ancient stone cities. There are no enormous pyramids, no carved temples reaching toward the sky. Instead, there are layers of stonework that tell a more subtle story, a story of adaptation, wealth, and a civilization that transformed itself after an earlier age had ended. But beneath these ancient walls lies a question that continues to intrigue historians and archaeologists. What happened when one of Africa's greatest medieval kingdoms began to change? And how did the people of Khami create a new center of power from the remains of an older world? Khami was built by the Torwa dynasty, a kingdom that emerged in the region after the decline of Great Zimbabwe during the 15th century AD. For approximately 2 centuries, from around the 15th to the 17th century, Khami served as a political and economic center in southern Africa. The city was not simply a replacement for Great Zimbabwe. It represented a new chapter. The builders of Khami inherited traditions of stone construction, but developed their own architectural style. Instead of relying only on massive freestanding walls, they created complex stone platforms supported by terraces. These elevated areas may have held royal residences, ceremonial spaces, and elite compounds. The design of Khami reveals a society that understood both engineering and symbolism. The arrangement of walls and platforms appears carefully planned, suggesting that architecture was not only about protection or practicality. It was also a way to express status, authority, and connection to the land. Walking through the ruins today, one can still see the precision of the builder's work. Stone blocks were placed into decorative patterns, creating flowing designs across the walls. Some sections display a style known as checkerboard decoration, where carefully arranged stones create visual patterns that remain impressive centuries later. But who were these people trying to impress? Their own communities, their ancestors, or perhaps visitors arriving from distant lands. Khami's location offers important clues. Like Great Zimbabwe, Khami existed within a larger network of trade and exchange. Archaeologists have uncovered imported objects including Chinese porcelain, European goods, and other items that reveal connections extending far beyond the interior of Africa. These discoveries challenge an outdated image of medieval Africa as isolated from the wider world. Khami was connected to international commerce, with goods moving through networks that stretched from inland settlements to the Indian Ocean coast. The presence of foreign objects raises fascinating questions. Who were the merchants who arrived at Khami? What languages were spoken in its markets? What stories did travelers bring from distant shores? The ruins provide evidence of these connections, but they do not reveal every detail. The voices of the people who lived here have disappeared, leaving archaeologists to reconstruct their lives through fragments. Among the most important discoveries at Khami are the remains of elite areas, suggesting a society with strong political organization. The rulers of Khami likely controlled valuable resources, including cattle and gold from the surrounding region. Gold was especially significant. Across southern Africa, gold became one of the most important materials exchanged with coastal trading communities. It helped connect inland kingdoms with powerful commercial centers across the Indian Ocean world. But wealth alone does not explain why Khami became important. Cities are built not only from resources, but from ideas. A city represents a vision of how people believe society should be organized. The walls of Khami may have marked divisions between different groups, separating royal spaces from ordinary living areas. They may have reflected hierarchy, ceremony, and beliefs about power. Yet, without written records, much remains uncertain. The people of Khami left behind architecture, tools, pottery, and artifacts, but not written histories explaining their world. What did their rulers fear? What did they hope to preserve? What traditions guided their decisions? These questions become even more mysterious when considering the spiritual side of Khami. Across many ancient societies, places of power were also places of connection between the physical world and the spiritual realm. Sacred landscapes, royal ceremonies, and ancestral beliefs often shaped how cities were built. Some researchers believe that certain areas of Khami may have held ceremonial importance, although the exact meaning of these spaces remains debated. Were the elevated platforms simply places for rulers to live, or were they designed to place leaders closer to the spiritual forces believed to influence the kingdom? The stones do not answer directly. They only invite interpretation. As with many ancient sites, Khami has also attracted more speculative theories. Some have wondered whether its unusual architecture points toward forgotten influences or unknown connections with distant civilizations. These ideas often emerge when people encounter ancient achievements that seem difficult to explain. The temptation is to search for hidden civilizations or lost knowledge. However, archaeological evidence strongly supports the understanding that Khami was created by local African societies with their own architectural traditions, skills, and innovations. The true mystery is not that outsiders built Khami. The true mystery is how much knowledge existed within these communities that history has only partially recovered. The rise of Khami also reflects a larger story about change. Civilizations are rarely frozen in time. They grow, adapt, move, and transform. When Great Zimbabwe declined, the people of the region did not simply disappear. New centers emerged, new leaders rose, and new forms of society developed. Khami represents this continuation. It shows that the end of one great city can become the beginning of another. But eventually, Khami too began to decline. By the 17th century, political changes and shifting trade patterns contributed to the city's abandonment. The rise of new powers in the region altered the balance of influence, and Khami slowly faded from being a major center. The reasons behind its decline remain an area of research and discussion. Was it caused by economic changes, political conflicts, environmental pressures, or a combination of many factors unfolding over generations? The absence of detailed records means that the final chapters of Khami's history remain incomplete. Today, the ruins stand quietly among the hills, offering only fragments of a vanished world. The walls remain, but the voices behind them are silent. The paths where merchants once walked are now covered by time. The spaces where rulers once made decisions are empty. And yet, Khami still speaks. It speaks through its carefully arranged stones, through the imported objects buried beneath the soil, through the patterns carved into its walls, through the evidence of a civilization that built, traded, governed, and created meaning in a changing world. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Khami is not why it disappeared. Perhaps it is how much of its story remains hidden. Beneath the earth surrounding the ruins, there may still be artifacts waiting to be discovered. Within the patterns of its architecture, there may still be meanings that have not been fully understood. And as researchers continue to study this forgotten capital, one question remains suspended across the centuries. How many secrets of Khami are still waiting beneath the stones, patiently waiting for humanity to remember? As the final echoes of Khami fade into the quiet landscapes of southern Africa, the search for forgotten civilizations continues. The story preserved within these stone walls is not only about the rise and fall of a single kingdom, but about a much larger human journey, a journey of adaptation, ambition, connection, and the endless search for meaning. Across the ancient world, cities emerged, flourished, and disappeared. Some were destroyed by war, others transformed by changing economies, and many simply faded as new centers of power replaced them. Yet, the remains they left behind continue to challenge our understanding of the past. A ruined wall, a buried artifact, or a forgotten pathway can reveal the existence of entire societies that once shaped the world around them. Khami reminds us that history is rarely a straight line. Civilizations do not simply rise and vanish. They evolve. Traditions are carried forward, knowledge is inherited, and new generations build upon the achievements of those who came before them. The decline of one city can become the foundation of another story waiting to be discovered. But perhaps the most fascinating mysteries are not always found in the grandeur of ancient monuments. They are hidden in the unanswered questions surrounding the people who created them. What did a merchant think while arriving at Khami with goods from distant lands? What did a craftsman feel while shaping the stones that would outlast their own lifetime? What hopes and fears existed behind the walls of royal compounds and ordinary homes? Archaeology can uncover structures and objects, but it can only reveal fragments of human experience. The emotions, conversations, and personal stories of those who lived thousands of years ago remain beyond our reach. In that silence, the mystery of ancient humanity continues. And Khami is only one chapter in a much larger story. Across continents, countless settlements remain buried beneath forests, deserts, and modern cities. Some have already been discovered, while others remain hidden, waiting for the moment when forgotten voices can speak again. Each discovery has the power to reshape what we believe about the capabilities, connections, and achievements of ancient societies. The past is not empty. It is filled with traces of lives that once existed, civilizations that once dreamed, and people who once looked toward the future just as we do today. Perhaps the greatest mystery of ancient history is not simply what was lost. It is how much remains undiscovered. Beneath the soil, beneath the stones, and beneath the layers of time, countless stories are still waiting. And as humanity continues searching for the remains of forgotten worlds, one question remains. How many civilizations have already been written into history, and how many more are still waiting for someone to uncover their first chapter? From the stone cities of southern Africa, where Khami revealed how human societies transformed landscapes into centers of power and connection, our exploration now travels northward to the ancient crossroads of the Caucasus. Here, between the mountains and valleys that have connected continents for thousands of years, another extraordinary settlement emerged from the earth itself. Carved into a rocky plateau above the Metekvari River in present-day Georgia, Uplistsikhe stands as a place where architecture, belief, and survival became inseparable. At first glance, the landscape appears almost untouched. A vast sandstone ridge rises above the river valley, shaped by wind, weather, and centuries of natural change. But as the eye moves closer, the marks of human intention begin to appear. Openings cut into the cliffs, narrow passageways descending into the rock, and chambers hidden within the stone reveal the remains of a city unlike most others in the ancient world. Uplistsikhe was not constructed in the traditional manner of placing buildings upon the land. Instead, its inhabitants transformed the landscape itself into a living settlement. They carved directly into the sandstone, creating halls, homes, storage areas, tunnels, and ceremonial spaces. The result was a city that seemed to emerge from the mountain, a place where the boundary between nature and human creation became almost impossible to separate. The origins of Uplistsikhe reach back to the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, with occupation beginning around the first millennium BC. Over many centuries, the settlement developed from a local community into one of the most significant centers of ancient Georgia. Its location gave it strategic importance, positioned near routes that connected the Caucasus with regions to the south, east, and west. The Caucasus has long been a region of movement and exchange. Armies, merchants, travelers, and ideas passed through these valleys for thousands of years. Uplistsikhe existed within this constantly changing environment, benefiting from connections between different cultures, while also facing the challenges that came with being located along important routes. By the time the city reached its greatest influence, Uplistsikhe had become far more than a collection of carved caves. It functioned as a complete urban environment. Archaeological evidence reveals areas for living, working, storing goods, and conducting ceremonies. The settlement included streets, defensive features, wine storage facilities, and large public spaces that suggest organized social activity. The scale of the city raises important questions. How did ancient builders coordinate the labor required to carve such an extensive network of structures? How many generations contributed to the expansion of the site? And what vision guided the transformation of a natural rock formation into a place capable of supporting a large community? Archaeologists generally understand Uplistsikhe as a major political and religious center of ancient Georgia. Its architecture reflects careful planning rather than random excavation. The arrangement of spaces suggests that different areas served different purposes, separating public activities from private life and creating a structured urban environment. Among the most impressive features is the central ceremonial area, often associated with the Great Hall. This large chamber contains architectural details that indicate it was intended for gatherings or important events. Its size and position within the settlement suggest that it represented a place of significance, possibly connected to religious ceremonies or the authority of local rulers. Yet, the exact experiences that took place inside these chambers remain uncertain. The people of Uplistsikhe left behind physical evidence, but not detailed explanations of their beliefs. There are no extensive written records describing their rituals, their stories, or the meanings behind their symbols. The stone preserves the structure of their world, but not every thought that shaped it. Before Christianity became dominant in Georgia, Uplistsikhe was associated with pre-Christian religious traditions. Natural forces, celestial bodies, and sacred landscapes played important roles in many ancient belief systems of the region. A settlement carved into a mountain may have carried symbolic importance, representing a connection between human society and the powerful forces of nature surrounding it. Some researchers have suggested that certain spaces within Uplistsikhe may have been designed with ritual purposes in mind, including areas connected to ceremonies involving fire, offerings, or seasonal events. These interpretations are based on archaeological comparisons and architectural clues, but the precise details remain open to discussion. The relationship between darkness and light is another intriguing aspect of the site. Many chambers within Uplistsikhe are enclosed within the rock, while others open toward the sky and surrounding landscape. Moving through the city would have meant constantly shifting between shadow and sunlight, enclosed spaces, and open views. Whether this contrast carried symbolic meaning or simply reflected practical design remains uncertain. The city's connection to trade also shaped its development. Archaeological discoveries indicate that Uplistsikhe participated in regional exchange networks, receiving goods and influences from surrounding areas. Its inhabitants produced wine, crafted tools, managed agriculture, and interacted with neighboring communities. Wine production appears to have been especially important. Georgia is one of the world's oldest wine-producing regions, with evidence of winemaking traditions extending back thousands of years. At Uplistsikhe, carved storage areas known as wine cellars reveal the importance of this practice. These spaces were not only economic facilities, but may also have been connected to cultural traditions surrounding hospitality, celebration, and ritual. As centuries passed, Uplistsikhe experienced periods of prosperity and decline. Its importance changed as political powers shifted across the Caucasus. During some periods, it served as a refuge and strategic stronghold. During others, its role became less central as new cities and centers of power emerged. The arrival and spread of Christianity in Georgia marked a significant transformation in the cultural landscape. Beginning in the 4th century AD, Christian institutions gradually replaced many earlier religious traditions. Churches were constructed at Uplistsikhe, including structures that remain visible today, demonstrating how the site adapted to changing beliefs rather than simply disappearing. This transition raises another fascinating question. How did the people who lived at Uplistsikhe experience such profound cultural change? Did older traditions disappear completely, or were some beliefs preserved and transformed within new religious practices? Across history, cultural transitions are rarely simple replacements. They are often complex processes where old and new ideas exist together. The strategic importance of Uplistsikhe continued into the medieval period. Its location made it valuable during times of conflict, particularly because the carved environment provided natural protection. The city's tunnels, elevated position, and defensive features allowed it to function as a stronghold when surrounding regions faced instability. However, changes in trade routes and political power gradually reduced its importance. The rise of other Georgian centers, combined with invasions and shifting economic conditions, contributed to the decline of Uplistsikhe as a major urban settlement. Yet, abandonment did not erase the city's presence. Unlike structures built from fragile materials, the rock-cut architecture preserved many traces of ancient activity. The walls, floors, and chambers continue to provide evidence of daily life, allowing modern researchers to reconstruct parts of a society that existed across many generations. Uplistsikhe has also attracted more speculative interpretations because of its unusual appearance. Some have imagined connections to underground civilizations, lost knowledge, or forgotten technologies, inspired by the complexity of its carved spaces. These ideas reflect the powerful impression created by the site, though archaeological evidence points toward gradual human development rather than unexplained origins. The true mystery of Uplistsikhe may be found not in impossible explanations, but in the remarkable ability of ordinary people to reshape their environment on such a massive scale. The city represents thousands of years of decisions, adaptations, and traditions passed from one generation to another. Every carved chamber contains evidence of human intention. A storage room suggests preparation and survival. A pathway suggests movement and connection. A ceremonial hall suggests shared beliefs and collective identity. Together, these elements create a portrait of a society that understood architecture as more than shelter. It was a way of expressing who they were and how they understood their place in the world. Today, the remains of Uplistsikhe stand above the Mardikh River as one of the Caucasus region's most remarkable archaeological landscapes. The silent chambers continue to attract researchers and visitors seeking to understand the people who transformed stone into a city. As the carved passages of Uplistsikhe disappear into the shadows of the mountain, the journey through humanity's forgotten landscapes continues. This ancient city leaves behind more than empty chambers and weathered stone. It reveals a deeper pattern that appears again and again throughout history. Humanity's endless attempt to adapt, create, and find meaning within the environments it inhabits. From mountains carved into cities to valleys transformed into centers of power, ancient people repeatedly reshaped the world around them. They did not simply build structures. They created places that reflected their beliefs, fears, hopes, and understanding of existence. A settlement was never only a collection of walls. It was a statement about survival, identity, and the relationship between humans and the forces of nature surrounding them. Uplistsikhe stands as a reminder that many ancient wonders were not created in isolation. They were the result of countless generations adding, changing, and preserving what came before. A single chamber may represent the work of many lifetimes. A single pathway may have carried the footsteps of people whose names have vanished, yet whose decisions still shape what we see today. But the deeper we travel into the ancient world, the more mysteries appear. Across forgotten valleys and hidden landscapes, there are countless places where human creativity left behind traces that remain only partially understood. Some ruins reveal the rise of powerful kingdoms. Others reveal moments of transition when old beliefs met new ideas. Some preserve the daily lives of ordinary people whose stories were never recorded in written history. And perhaps these forgotten voices are among the most important to rediscover. Because history is not only written by kings and conquerors, it is also created by farmers, craftsmen, builders, merchants, and families who shaped the world through ordinary choices repeated across generations. The silent chambers of Uplistsikhe invite us to imagine those lives. The conversations that once filled its halls, the celebrations that echoed through its spaces, the fears faced by communities living through changing times. Every mark carved into the stone represents a moment when someone decided to create something that would last beyond their own lifetime. Yet, many questions remain unanswered. How many ancient settlements still lie hidden beneath the earth? How many forgotten traditions disappeared before they could be recorded? And how many stories of human ingenuity are still waiting to emerge from places that have remained silent for centuries? The past is not truly gone. It survives in fragments, waiting to be recognized. And as we continue exploring the greatest mysteries of ancient humanity, each discovery brings us closer to a larger truth. The story of civilization is far older, more complex, and more mysterious than we often imagine. From the carved chambers of Uplistsikhe, where generations of people transformed a natural rock formation into a place of shelter, ritual, and power, our journey now moves deeper into the ancient landscapes where the first cities began to emerge. Across the high plains of eastern Anatolia, where rivers cut through fertile valleys and mountain ranges shaped the movement of early communities, another extraordinary sight reveals a turning point in human history. Here, at Arslantepe, the remains of a forgotten urban center preserve evidence of one of the earliest forms of organized authority, administration, and social hierarchy. Near the modern city of Malatya in eastern Turkey, rising above the surrounding plain, is a large archaeological mound known as Arslantepe. At first glance, it appears to be a simple hill covered with grass and soil, but beneath its layers lie thousands of years of human activity, with traces of settlements built one upon another across different periods. The mound is not a single city frozen in time, but a record of continuous transformation, showing how human societies gradually moved from small farming communities toward more complex forms of organization. The name Arslantepe means Lion Hill, a reference to the later discoveries of impressive lion sculptures found at the site. Yet, the true significance of this place reaches far beyond its name. Arslantepe has provided archaeologists with some of the earliest evidence for the development of centralized power, specialized labor, and administrative systems that would eventually shape the rise of cities throughout the ancient world. The settlement's history extends back to the 6th millennium BC, when early agricultural communities established themselves in the region. These first inhabitants lived in villages based on farming and animal husbandry, relying on the fertile environment created by nearby rivers and plains. Over time, their communities grew more organized, and new forms of social cooperation began to appear. The most remarkable period of Arslantepe's history emerged during the late 4th millennium BC, when the site developed into a major center of political and economic activity. During this period, monumental buildings appeared, including a large administrative complex with storage rooms, ceremonial spaces, and areas dedicated to the management of resources. This discovery challenged traditional ideas about where complex societies first developed. For many years, scholars often emphasized southern Mesopotamia as the primary birthplace of urban organization. Arslantepe revealed that important developments were also taking place in the surrounding regions, where communities were independently experimenting with new forms of administration and authority. Inside the administrative complex, archaeologists discovered evidence of an organized system for collecting and distributing goods. Storage rooms contained remains of agricultural products, while clay seals and impressed tokens indicated methods of controlling resources. These findings suggest that Arslantepe had developed a bureaucratic system long before many later states became established. The presence of these administrative tools raises profound questions about the nature of early power. When did leadership become something more than simple community organization? At what point did certain individuals gain authority over resources, labor, and decision-making? And how did societies transition from shared village structures into systems where inequality and hierarchy became more visible? Archaeologists generally interpret Arslantepe as one of the earliest examples of a centralized political system. Rather than being governed only by informal cooperation, the community appears to have developed institutions capable of managing production and distribution. This does not necessarily represent a fully developed state, but it reveals the foundations of political organization. One of the most significant discoveries at Arslantepe was a collection of weapons, including swords and spears made from metal. These artifacts are among the earliest known examples of true swords discovered anywhere in the world. Their presence suggests that specialized craftsmanship and organized forms of conflict or authority were emerging during this period. The discovery of these weapons has led researchers to examine the relationship between technology and power. Metal production required knowledge, resources, and skilled workers. Those who controlled access to valuable materials may have gained influence within society. Did these weapons belong to warriors? Were they symbols of status, or did they represent the growing ability of leaders to organize force? The answers remain uncertain. Archaeologists can identify patterns in the material evidence, but the thoughts and motivations of the people who created these objects are more difficult to recover. The artistic remains of Arslantepe provide additional insight into its culture. Stone sculptures, painted walls, and decorative objects reveal a society capable of complex artistic expression. Some discoveries include representations of animals and human figures, reflecting traditions that connected people with the natural and symbolic worlds around them. The famous lion sculptures discovered at the site belong to a later period, particularly the Iron Age phase of Arslantepe. These works reflect the continued importance of the location long after its earliest urban developments. The settlement remained connected to regional powers and cultural changes for thousands of years. One of the fascinating aspects of Arslantepe is that it existed between different worlds. Located near the boundaries of Anatolia and Mesopotamia, it was influenced by multiple cultural traditions. Trade routes, migration, and political relationships connected the region to surrounding civilizations, allowing ideas and technologies to move across vast distances. Some interpretations of Arslantepe have focused on whether it should be considered one of the earliest cities. The answer depends on how the term city is defined. It did not have the enormous populations or monumental structures associated with later urban centers, but it displayed several features that would become fundamental to city life: administration, specialized labor, organized production, and social hierarchy. This uncertainty reflects a larger question in archaeology. Does civilization begin with massive buildings and written records, or does it begin earlier, with the systems and ideas that make those achievements possible? Arslantepe offers evidence of that transition. It captures a moment when human communities were experimenting with new ways of organizing themselves. The people who lived there were not simply building homes. They were creating systems for managing resources, defining roles, and establishing authority. Yet the development of hierarchy also raises difficult questions. Did centralized leadership improve cooperation and stability, or did it create new forms of inequality? Did ordinary people benefit from these changes, or did power become concentrated among a smaller group? The archaeological record cannot provide simple answers. The remains show structures and objects, but they do not reveal every human experience behind them. A storage room tells us that resources were collected, but not how people felt about the system controlling them. A weapon reveals technology and power, but not the intentions of the person who carried it. Around the end of the 4th millennium BC, Arslantepe experienced a major transformation. Evidence suggests that the administrative complex was destroyed by fire, possibly during a period of conflict or social change. The reasons remain debated. Was the destruction caused by outside forces, internal tensions, environmental pressures, or a combination of factors? After this event, the settlement continued through different phases, adapting as new cultures and political systems emerged. The region experienced the influence of various kingdoms and empires, each leaving traces within the layers of the mound. This long history makes Arslantepe especially valuable. Unlike sites associated with a single civilization, it preserves a continuous story of human adaptation. Each layer represents a different chapter in the development of society, from early farming communities to organized political structures. The discoveries at Arslantepe have changed how researchers understand the origins of complex societies. They suggest that the rise of civilization was not a single event occurring in one place, but a gradual process shaped by many communities across different landscapes. Today, standing before the quiet mound of Arslantepe, it is difficult to imagine the activity that once filled this place. Thousands of years ago, workers carried goods into storage rooms, craftsmen shaped metal and stone, leaders made decisions, and communities negotiated the challenges of a changing world. The stones and artifacts preserve evidence of a society standing at the edge of a new era. They reveal the beginnings of systems that would eventually define kingdoms and empires, yet they also leave behind questions about the human choices that created them. What inspired the people of Arslantepe to build the first foundations of organized authority? How did a farming community become one of the earliest centers of administration and power? And what other stories remain buried beneath the layers of this ancient hill, waiting to reveal how humanity first began to reshape its own destiny? As the story of Arslantepe fades beneath the layers of time, the search for the origins of human civilization continues. This ancient mound does not simply reveal the remains of buildings and objects. It reveals a moment when humanity began to transform itself in ways that would shape thousands of years of history. The questions raised here are not only about the past, but about the very foundations of the world we recognize today. The emergence of administration, hierarchy, and organized authority was a turning point unlike any before it. It allowed communities to achieve greater cooperation, create larger settlements, and develop new forms of innovation. But it also introduced new challenges that would follow humanity throughout history: the concentration of power, the division of society, and the struggle between collective needs and individual ambition. Arslantepe stands as a reminder that civilization was not created overnight. It was built slowly, through countless decisions made by ordinary people whose names have disappeared. Farmers who produced surplus food, craftsmen who developed new skills, workers who constructed buildings, and leaders who organized resources all contributed to a transformation whose effects can still be seen today. Yet for every answer found beneath the soil, another mystery appears. How did ancient communities decide who should lead? When did cooperation become authority? When did the management of resources become the foundation of power? These changes may have seemed small at first, but over generations they created the structures that would eventually give rise to kingdoms, empires, and complex states. Across the world, other ancient settlements preserve similar moments of transformation. Some reveal the birth of writing. Others reveal the creation of monumental architecture, religious systems, or long-distance trade networks. Together, they form a much larger story. The story of humanity learning not only how to survive, but how to organize, influence, and reshape the world around it. But the deeper we look into the past, the more we realize how incomplete our understanding remains. Beneath countless hills, deserts, and forgotten landscapes, traces of ancient lives are still waiting to be discovered. Each excavation has the potential to rewrite what we know about where civilization began and how human societies evolved. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not simply how the first cities appeared. It is why humanity began building them at all. What dreams, fears, and ambitions pushed early communities beyond the boundaries of simple villages? What hidden stories remain beneath the earth, waiting to reveal the forgotten moments when humanity first began creating the foundations of the modern world? The journey into the ancient past continues, because every layer uncovered brings us closer to understanding not only where civilization came from, but what it truly means to be human. From the ancient mound of Arslantepe, where early communities began experimenting with administration, hierarchy, and the foundations of organized power, our journey now moves forward into a later chapter of Anatolia's long and complex history. High above the valleys of southeastern Turkey, where mountains dominate the horizon and the landscape stretches toward the meeting point of cultures, another remarkable sight reveals a different expression of human ambition. Here, on the summit of Nemrut Dağı, a ruler sought to create a monument that would unite kingship, religion, and the eternal landscape itself. Far above the surrounding plains, at an elevation of more than 2,100 meters, the summit of Nemrut Dağı rises beneath the open sky. The mountain appears isolated and immense, surrounded by rugged terrain and dramatic views that extend across the eastern Anatolian landscape. Yet, at its peak, lies a human-made sanctuary unlike almost any other in the ancient world. A vast artificial mound surrounded by colossal stone statues, carved figures, and inscriptions that preserve the ambitions of a forgotten kingdom. The sanctuary of Nemrut Dağı was created during the 1st century BC by King Antiochus, the first Theos of Commagene, a small but culturally influential kingdom located between the great powers of Rome, Persia, and Anatolia. Unlike the enormous empires that surrounded it, Commagene was relatively limited in territory, yet its rulers developed a unique identity that blended Greek, Persian, and local traditions. Antiochus I envisioned Nemrut as more than a royal monument. It was designed as a sacred landscape where the king's memory would exist alongside the gods and ancestors he claimed as his lineage. The sanctuary represented a carefully constructed statement of power, ancestry, and cosmic order. At the summit stands a massive cone-shaped mound of broken stones, rising approximately 50 meters above the mountain. Beneath this artificial peak, researchers believe the remains of a royal burial chamber may exist, though the exact location and contents remain uncertain. The mound itself has never been fully opened, leaving one of the greatest archaeological questions of Nemrut Dağı unresolved. What lies beneath the stones of the summit? Is there truly a hidden chamber containing the remains of Antiochus I, or does the monument conceal something different? Despite decades of investigation, the interior of the mound remains one of the sanctuary's most enduring mysteries. Around the eastern and western terraces of Nemrut Dağı are enormous seated statues originally standing between 8 and 10 meters tall. These figures represent a combination of Greek and Persian deities, along with Antiochus himself. Today, many of the heads have fallen from their original positions and rest separately on the ground, creating one of the most recognizable archaeological scenes in the world. The statues depict a carefully chosen group of divine and royal figures. Among them are representations associated with Zeus, Apollo, Heracles, and other deities, combined with Persian-inspired names and imagery. This mixture reflects the unique character of Commagene, a kingdom positioned between different cultural worlds. Rather than choosing one tradition over another, Antiochus attempted to merge them. His monument suggests a vision where Greek mythology, Persian royal heritage, and local beliefs could exist together within a single religious system. The meaning behind this combination raises fascinating questions. Was Antiochus attempting to create a new religious identity for his kingdom? Was he using familiar symbols from different cultures to strengthen political unity? Or was Nemrut Dağı designed primarily as a personal monument to ensure that his name endured beyond his lifetime? Archaeologists generally interpret the sanctuary as a hierothesion, a sacred monument dedicated to the ruler and his ancestors. Inscriptions discovered at the site provide valuable information about Antiochus's intentions, describing his devotion to the gods and outlining rituals that were meant to continue after his death. The inscriptions reveal a ruler deeply concerned with memory. Antiochus instructed future generations to honor the sanctuary and maintain ceremonies in his name. This desire for remembrance was not unusual among ancient kings, but Nemrut Dağı expresses it on an extraordinary scale. The location itself appears carefully chosen. The summit provides views extending across vast areas of Anatolia, creating a powerful connection between the monument and the surrounding environment. Ancient builders often selected elevated locations for sacred structures, believing that mountains represented places where humans could approach divine forces. At Nemrut Dağı, the mountain itself becomes part of the monument. The boundary between natural landscape and human creation disappears. The gods appear to sit above the world, overlooking the valleys below, while the king's image stands beside them. This relationship between geography and belief has led some researchers to examine whether astronomical considerations influenced the design. The orientation of certain features at Nemrut has been studied in relation to the movements of the sun and stars. Some interpretations suggest possible connections with celestial events, while others argue that the evidence remains insufficient to confirm deliberate astronomical planning. The uncertainty surrounding these possibilities reflects the broader challenge of interpreting ancient monuments. Builders left behind structures, but they did not leave explanations for every decision. Modern researchers must reconstruct intentions from incomplete evidence. Beyond its religious meaning, Nemrut Dağı also reveals the political challenges faced by Kamajene. The kingdom existed in a region where powerful forces competed for influence. To survive between Rome and Persia, Kamajene needed a strong identity that distinguished it from its neighbors. Antiochus's monument can be understood as a declaration of independence and legitimacy. By connecting himself to both Persian royal ancestry and Greek divine traditions, he presented his rule as part of a much larger historical and cosmic order. Yet the kingdom's independence did not last forever. In the 1st century AD, Kamajene was eventually incorporated into the Roman Empire. After this transition, Nemrut Dağı lost its original political and religious function. The ceremonies intended to preserve Antiochus's memory gradually disappeared, and the sanctuary became a silent monument on an isolated mountain. For centuries, the statues and inscriptions remained exposed to the elements. Earthquakes, weather, and time altered the site, causing the massive heads of the statues to fall from their bodies. The once carefully arranged sanctuary became partially buried and forgotten from wider historical awareness until modern archaeological investigations brought it back into focus. The rediscovery of Nemrut Dağı in the 19th century introduced the monument to modern scholarship, but many questions remained. The absence of a confirmed burial chamber has continued to fuel speculation. Some researchers have searched for hidden passages or undiscovered structures beneath the artificial mound, while others argue that the monument's true significance lies not in what may be hidden below, but in what is already visible above. The idea of a hidden chamber has also attracted more speculative theories. Some have imagined that the mountain contains unknown treasures, lost knowledge, or artifacts that could transform understanding of the ancient world. These possibilities capture the imagination, but archaeological evidence remains the foundation for understanding the site. The greatest mystery of Nemrut Dağı may not be a physical object waiting underground. It may be the question of what Antiochus truly hoped to achieve. Was he seeking immortality through memory? Was he attempting to unite competing cultural traditions? Or was the sanctuary a reflection of a ruler's attempt to define his place within a changing world? The statues themselves provide clues, but they also create new questions. Their calm expressions and monumental scale suggest authority and permanence, yet the kingdom that created them eventually disappeared. The gods carved into stone remained, but the political world surrounding them transformed completely. Standing among the fallen heads of Nemrut Dağı today, visitors encounter a scene that feels suspended between history and legend. The mountain remains silent, but the monument continues to communicate the ambitions of a ruler who wanted his name remembered for eternity. The sanctuary represents one of humanity's oldest desires, the attempt to leave a lasting mark against the passage of time. Across civilizations, rulers and societies have built monuments to preserve identity, belief, and memory. Nemrut Dağı stands among the most dramatic examples of this universal impulse. Yet the summit still holds unanswered questions. What ceremonies once filled this mountain sanctuary beneath the stars? What lies beneath the great stone mound at its center? And what deeper meaning did Antiochus I intend to preserve when he placed himself among the gods on this remote peak, where the ancient landscape continues to guard its secrets? As the mystery of Nemrut Dağı fades into the silence of the mountains, the search for humanity's forgotten stories continues. Across the ancient world, rulers, civilizations, and cultures attempted to challenge the limits of time by carving their beliefs into stone, burying their memories beneath the earth, and creating monuments that could speak long after their creators were gone. Yet every discovery reveals not only answers, but new uncertainties. The summit of Nemrut Dağı reminds us that ancient monuments are more than collections of stones. They are messages sent across thousands of years, fragments of human ambition preserved through unimaginable changes. The people who built these places lived in worlds that were both familiar and distant. They watched the same stars, faced the same mysteries of existence, and searched for meaning in ways that still feel strangely connected to our own questions today. But Nemrut is only one piece of a much larger forgotten landscape. Across mountains, deserts, forests, and buried cities, countless traces of ancient humanity remain hidden. Some lie beneath layers of soil waiting to be uncovered. Others stand openly before us, yet their true purpose remains uncertain. A forgotten inscription, a sealed chamber, or a carefully arranged stone can completely transform our understanding of the past. Perhaps the greatest mysteries of ancient history are not created by what we find, but by what is missing. The lost voices of builders, rulers, priests, and ordinary people leave behind only fragments of their existence. From those fragments, we attempt to reconstruct entire civilizations, trying to understand their beliefs, their fears, and their dreams. And sometimes, the silence itself becomes part of the mystery. What other monuments were created with meanings that have not yet been understood? What forgotten kingdoms disappeared before their stories could be recorded? What knowledge was lost when ancient cities fell, libraries burned, and generations passed into history? The world beneath our feet still holds countless secrets. Every excavation, every artifact, and every ancient structure offers another glimpse into the long journey of humanity. But with every discovery, the past seems to become not simpler, but deeper. Because ancient history is not only a record of what humanity achieved, it is also a reminder of how much remains unknown. Beyond this mountain, beyond these stones, and beyond the civilizations already remembered, other mysteries continue to wait in the darkness of time, silent witnesses to chapters of human history that have not yet been revealed.